I'm going to start out tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're grateful to have everybody here. Bob Washburn's here from the commission. Shelley Nazar's here from the commission. Bob Hankey is here from the commission, and myself, Brian Marvel, acting chairman. We also have Mike Fortune. The chairman is online with us tonight. We also have Scarlett Bankhead and Ryan Snow and Tyler Cameron, all representing the staff from the city of Providence. We're going to start by having a pledge of allegiance, and we've asked Shelley Nazar.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. We're going to start off tonight. No public comments.
I didn't see any.
I don't see any public comments coming through. Okay, we're not going to start with public comments anyway. We're going to start with approval of the minutes. Are there any changes, any more changes to November 8th minutes that we want to look at tonight before we make a motion to accept them? The way they've been changed.
I do either comments or questions. On row 86, line 86. No, hang on. Yes, okay, on line 86.
Of which set?
This is November 8th.
Row 86?
Line 86. In the middle of the page, it says, which is what the city, I think it should say the city instead of they city. Just makes more sense to me. Comments on that?
I agree.
No. Okay, on line. Okay, so that one's okay. Check the recording on that. Okay, and then on line 149. Rezoning existing districts and annexed areas recommended. These, I believe, it should be rather than this are. Recommended these as mixed use. Rather than this are as mixed use. That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
I think, yeah, that's the only thing, and I appreciate you making the corrections that we talked about in our previous meeting.
Shelley, Mr. Hankey, any changes from November?
Oh, that's
8th?
supposed to be this area.
Pardon me?
This area.
Oh,
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm sorry.
on page
The
row
one that
149.
Ryan has highlighted, the rezone of existing districts and annexed areas recommended this area as mixed use.
This area is, okay, that makes sense too.
So,
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm good with that.
Shelley, anything?
Yeah, I submitted just a couple little typo grammar things to Ty, but I think overall they look great. So I just want to say thank you. That's a lot of work, 2.5 hours of minutes condensed in a couple pages. So thank you so much, Ty.
Mr. Hankey, any changes? Okay. Okay, we're gonna move on to January 10th.
Are we gonna accept these
Oh.
and then move on?
I think
Or are we gonna do
I
it
think
all at
you're-
once?
I think you're all right. You wanna do the vice chairman?
No.
I would like that. Would like to take a motion what to do with these minutes.
I move we, accept the minutes from November 8th as, modified and adjusted today.
I'll second.
Before we vote on it, Mr. Fortune, do you have any changes?
No, I think you guys got everything. I didn't have as much as you, but what I did have, you guys already addressed.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of accepting November 8th minutes for the planning commission, 2023? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then accepted. Let's move on to January 10th. And I think we'll move in the same direction. Bob, have you got some changes you want to see made on those, or do you like the way they stand?
Yes, there are a couple of things. Okay, so on line 61, I just got a question. Line 61 reads, when adding a provision for inflatable signs and adding an appeal process and non-waiver. I'm not sure what non-waiver means.
Could you clarify that, Scarlett? Does that make any sense to you?
I'll have to look at the way that's worded, but I believe it's the paragraph that if any part of that section is not correct, it doesn't allow it. Isn't that what the one the non-waiver is, Ryan? I don't remember for sure. But I know it's some type of that if we do something, we're not waiving our rights to something else.
Okay,
So I'll have to go back and actually
Okay.
look at the code.
And there's, so in that section, okay, I had another question which is in line 58. The whole section reads, Scarlett Bankhead commented on a recent planning review with Chick-fil-A and the current code regarding signs and how there is a section that doesn't allow signs on the highway to have lighting, which of course is an issue as signs with lights are allowed. And so my question is, signs with lights are allowed by
Actually, right now, they're
Right.
not.
whom?
So they've
Have
been
been.
allowed by
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 nobody
default.
enforcing
yeah,
the non-lighting.
there you go.
Okay,
I think
so
you could just change that to have been allowed.
in error, or it's just confusing. So our current code does not allow signs with lighting,
Signs on the highway. that
signs on
way.
the highway with lighting,
Right,
with lights. And then it continues, which of course is an issue as signs with lights are allowed.
we should probably say
Have
have
been
Permit.
been
permitted.
Have been constructed.
have been constructed and used without enforcing. I don't know how we wanna say it.
I don't know
It
that we
just
have to-
doesn't ma-
I don't know that we have to put enforcement mechanism, simply that they have been
Probably installed.
Have been
and
utilized.
installed and utilized.
Installed and utilized would be fine. And so now we want to make changes to the code that allows that. Is that, I mean, that's the message. But it's not clear to me that message is getting through. And then the non-waiver thing, I didn't understand, so.
I have one comment on that paragraph. It would probably be better to say in a recent zoning review, because this kind of makes it sound like
We're
the
doing it
planning
for
commission
Chick-fil-A.
looked at it and you did not. It was
Right,
a,
we didn't.
it was a zoning review that the staff does that found that.
Staff zoning review, would that be a better way to say it?
If you just say zoning review, that works.
Okay.
Okay, so 58 you're okay with. 61 is still a question.
Yeah, I just don't know what it means.
I think it needs clarification. So that one needs to go back. Anything else?
I think we can just strike the add non-waiver if you want, just, and adding an appeals process.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can strike the non-waiver.
Okay,
And so on 58, are we, have we determined how we want that to be worded then?
Like I put, lights have been installed and utilized.
Okay, have been installed and utilized. Okay. Okay, I'm good with that.
okay. Shelley?
There's one other, just a really small thing, row or line 127. There would be a way to, which is 2 words, to request that it be taken down rather than there would be a way. As a single word, it doesn't make sense.
We just need to separate the two words.
Yeah, there would be a way to request that it be taken down.
That makes sense, Tyler?
Make
Yeah.
that into 2 words.
Okay.
And,
Good, Bob, you're on a roll.
I'm just picky. I don't understand a lot of stuff, so I just.
Just keep going. This is
I'm good.
This is important. You're good?
I'm good with the rest
Okay.
of that, yeah.
Sure.
And
No, I wasn't here for the meeting. I think I'll abstain. I think the minutes look great and I did watch the video and appreciated the lively sign discussion. It was, yes, very entertaining.
Glad we could entertain your show. Mr. Hanky, any changes on January 10th? Okay. Okay, Mr. Fortune, any changes on January 10th minutes?
No, no, I don't have anything. Everything looks good.
I'll make another motion that we accept the minutes from January 10th
Looking for a motion, there's a motion,
as altered here.
as has been altered tonight. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
I guess I can vote today. I'll second it.
okay. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes with the changes that we've made tonight. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Michael, you're coming through loud and clear.
Great.
We're done with the minutes. We don't have any to send back for changes that are big and hairy, so we're gonna go on to public hearings. There are none tonight. We're gonna go to public comments, excuse me, first. And anything in the mail or email or text messaging?
no,
Comments, okay. Public hearing, there's no public hearings tonight, there's no legislative actions tonight. There's no administrative actions tonight.
Brian,
Um,
can I ask a question?
Sure,
I wanted to ask Scarlett, and Ty, are we planning to have a public hearing on the 28th of February? For the, I think we had one item that went to that last meeting. And I think we're gonna also have the, line of sight issue. So is that when we're planning to do it, on the 28th?
Yeah, depending on how things go tonight, I had on my list the potential for 4 public hearings that night, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
okay. Okay. The first study item we've got tonight is to continue our Clearview discussions. We got started, but that's about as far as we got with the Clearview discussions. I would like to start with Mr. Hanky. No, I'm gonna do this a different way. We need to review, do we need to go top to bottom? I don't know. I've looked at the code, I've looked at the code and I've looked at the ramifications on my street. And the code, maybe it's just the one paragraph, is very detrimental to the street I live on. I've got 3 blocks of First South, and there would be over 20 trees that would need to be removed. Whether they're done so or not, I don't know, but as far as the actual code would affect those, and I think the previous code affected those as well. So we got started on 10.9.2. The purpose, let's see, the name has been changed from corner lot obstruction to clear view areas obstruction. A is the purpose, and no changes on A.
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
can I just interrupt for a second, just ask a question? Do we need to have a re-review, overview of what it is that we're doing with this? Scott?
You mean, sure.
I
Well,
just wondered if we wanted to do that,
um,
because some people weren't here when we started this last time,
so
and
I'm looking at the
so
code
it's on the
changes.
record.
They are significant here. Lot of red areas. It's not a long piece of code like some of the others that we're tasked with. So, let's do that since Shelley's here. And because we all kind of stepped back last time
Okay.
and we need to
You wanna sit with us?
step forward.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just
Yeah.
sit up here. I will kind of just stand right here for a second though and explain. We do get quite a few, oh, that's a pipe. We do get quite a few calls, particularly during the summer. When the vegetation, not just trees, but all sorts of vegetation, as it starts to grow. We get a lot of phone calls from people concerned about the safety of our intersections. And so we also have realized that in some of our areas where people are doing some of their landscaping and stuff, we're trying to let people know, but they don't always remember about some of our regulations. So we thought we would take a look and try and make our code a little bit clearer as to what can and can't happen within clear view areas and site triangles with roads that have curves on them. The reason why we've included the site triangle, we did not realize it. We had some people that were concerned about the intersection at Sarah and Spring Creek Parkway. Right, not right now. Previous to the traffic study that we had done, Spring Creek Parkway was the through street and Sarah had the stop signs. However, there were people that felt like Spring Creek Parkway should have stop signs. Now, they wanted stop signs for a different reason than why they actually ended up being put there. So we had enough calls that Ryan decided to do his due diligence, and we had a traffic analysis done on that intersection. And what we found is that it actually did meet a warrant for a 4-way stop, but not because of traffic volume, which is generally what causes stop signs. 4-way stop signs are generally that both streets have enough volume at that stop sign that the one street is waiting way long to be able to cross. So you put as 4-way so that they kind of get equal opportunity. This was not the case. In this case, because of the way the curves are of the road and the placement of the intersection and a couple of landscaping changes, elevation changes on lots and things, it actually happened that 2 lots And one of them is actually a little ways away from the intersection, impacted that intersection. And so we decided that we needed to put something in there. Our biggest problem really that we have people that get frustrated with though really is, it seems to be the trees. And our previous code said that trees could be in this Clearview area as long as the trunk didn't get any bigger than 12 inches in diameter, not circumference, but diameter. And the canopy needed to be kept at least 8 feet high. Well, a lot of problems with trees in that area, their trunk may be less than 12 inches in diameter, but they're not tall enough for the canopy to be out of the way. So the canopies are blocking stop signs, they're blocking clear view, things like that. So Rob came to me and he said, Scarlett, can we just take trees out of the clear view area? Because it's very difficult to have a tree that is going to keep a trunk small enough to meet the requirement as it matures, and also be tall enough for it to have a canopy that will allow 8 feet of space so that you can see. So that's the reason why we're suggesting that the trees be taken out of that area, that they not be there. And it does say tree canopies or growth shall not block signs, signals, or streetlights. And there are several places where I know vegetation is blocking street signs. And so that's one of the reasons. Most of this really truly, except for the stop sign, or excuse me, except for the sight triangle related to the stop sign traffic analysis, really has come from trying to update our code to be consistent with what other areas are doing as a result of complaints we've received from citizens. So that's where they came from. And then we haven't had anything on residential driveways in our code. And we've had a lot of people that have, they've designed driveways that once they install them, they become problematic for the homeowner, for the city.
For viewing.
For viewing and for safety purposes. We have some of them that I just hold my breath this winter to hope that they don't just zip right off out into the space. And so we've tried to put something in place. Most people probably will design a driveway to meet these requirements without it being said. But this puts something in place so that as people are laying out their house, especially in some of our hillside areas, they will look at the placement of that house and make sure that access into that lot is feasible. Or, we have one case in point where they put the house in a place that made access to that lot very difficult. The lot could have been utilized, that where they put it, the setbacks, they met the setbacks and everything, but if they put the garage just a little bit differently, they wouldn't have had the access issues that they're having, or the elevation of the house just a little bit differently. They wouldn't have the access issues that we're having, but we didn't have anything in code that would tell anyone to really look for all of those kind of things. And so as a result, we put the driveway clauses in there. And then because we added that driveway section, that led to have to renumber a couple of other sections. And because we are redoing the accessory building, dwelling units, that whole chapter, we took the little clause out about that and just refer them to chapter 1012, which we'll discuss, which will have the full-blown area that accessory buildings can use once we get to that. So that's the reasoning behind the changes. So, questions?
The red is new material.
The red's new material,
The black is existing code, is that correct?
correct.
Okay,
Okay, when the idea of rewriting the code came about, you're saying it came from the complaints and plus from some of the unintentional efforts by citizens when they're building their houses.
Unintentional consequences, yeah.
And
And
things
that-
that
and I-
things that can be cleaned up in code.
I really want to point out, they're meeting the code. It's just that there were unintentional consequences that we didn't see. So we're trying to make the code a little clearer so that we look out for those in the future.
So we're talking about the future of clear areas, but is this whole section 10.9.1, 10.9, 10.9, this whole section, is it true that it's not gonna be grandfathered in? That there's not gonna be any grandfathering involved in this?
Well,
Is that the whole 10.9 or just parts of it?
that's true, that it's not gonna be grandfathered in, but we don't have to actually put that in the code, because if it's a life safety issue, we can, even if it meets our code, if it's a life safety issue and it's making an intersection unsafe, we can remove the vegetation, even if it was put in there legally and it's a legal thing.
What about the
So-
driveways issue?
Oh, no, the driveway, that won't be. It's just the Clearview areas that will,
So there's no safety concerns about the driveways?
well, there are safety concerns, but we won't make people completely rebuild their driveways.
Okay.
We might make them change some vegetation because of how they put their driveway there, but we won't make them rebuild the driveway generally.
We do have some downsloping driveways in the city,
Mhm.
right?
Scarlett, who would be responsible for paying for the removal of issues that are in the line of sight, clear view areas? Is it the
Well-
homeowner?
Yeah, it
What
probably
about that,
is.
that's in the
However-
park strip?
The park strips, the landscaping that's in the park strips actually is the responsibility of the homeowner. They're supposed to follow our code, but it is their responsibility to maintain it. I know that we have worked with some homeowners on tree removal, but it often is the responsibility of the homeowner. Do you want to answer that, Ryan?
I would just add to that, that if it is a city project that we are, say we're widening the road or we're doing something that we are there to affect it, and that is being done as a result of that, then oftentimes that is covered at the city expense, if we're there. So if we came down to widen the road and needed to take out trees, then obviously we would take them out at the city expense and that project expense. If there's a hazard that were identified, then we would go to the adjacent property owner in the park strip, for them, to follow the ordinance. But if we were there is a chance that the city would take a project and fix a safety problem.
What
Thank
would
you.
happen if, like a public utility, like a power line? I'm thinking of a specific.
A 12-inch pole that was in.
Yeah, there's a specific intersection, Spring Creek Parkway and 300 South. That's
I'll bring it up, hold on just a second.
got a bit of just right by the
By what?
current visionary.
By Vineyard?
Yeah, by Vineyard, that's it.
300 East.
300
East,
East, did I
yeah.
say South?
Yeah, because I was trying to. Spring Creek
300 East and Spring Creek Parkway.
300
Right
East of
there
Spring Creek
is
Parkway
like a power line,
along, Oh,
right on that corner,
Which corner is the pole on?
southwest.
here,
Yep,
okay? What's your question now that we have it up?
I believe that the power line is within the site triangle. So what would be done about that?
So depending on if the pole is the diameter of the pole, if it exceeds that amount, then it would be requested to be removed.
In the current code?
In the new-
In the-
Well, in the current
proposed.
code, we could have that or the new code. That's
Okay.
irrelevant to the question,
But
but
the
yeah.
new code is requesting that there not be anything there. The trees and obstructions are all removed.
The new
Like I
code is
said.
requesting that trees not be planted in there anymore. It's not
Anything
saying
less than
about
12 inches.
Yeah.
Will still be in there.
flag poles, utility poles. If they're less than 12 inches, they could be in there.
Right.
But, trees, and the reasons why we're asking to not put trees there is because the growth of the tree over a period of time does not always stay consistent with the code, and then it becomes a problem. And then it's a very expensive problem, because the bigger the tree is, the more expensive to remove. So Rob just felt like it would be better to just say no trees there.
So if you had an artificial tree, you could put an artificial tree in there, Brian.
Thanks.
That intersection right and that spot that you're talking about. There's a chain link fence that's right along the side of the road. And, grasses and weeds in the summertime grow to be 4 feet high and
Yep.
it's really hard to see that intersection. I saw a guy kind of trimming those up one day and I called out my window, hey, thanks a lot for doing that. It's awesome. Because it is,
He has a tough time keeping up with those weeds in that area. I swear, he trims them and they pop right back within 2 weeks.
yeah, so anyway, I mean, that's, I haven't even noticed the telephone pole, but I noticed all the vegetation that grows up right along the fence. It's hard to keep it down and it's a
It makes
problem.
a transparent fence and opaque.
Yeah, exactly. It makes a chain link fence so you can't see through it.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
just
so-
a diagram here, because I think visual makes important. So the site triangle, if we calculate, it's 30 feet wide, 30 feet wide, if you do your, if you do your calculations of the Pythagorean theorem and all of those, you'll get to about 20 feet off of the corner there, and then it's 30 feet off of the setback. So at that point, you're looking, so if you come back 30 feet off the setback and 30 feet off the setback, you're at 20 feet to the middle. At this point, on this particular one, that's what you're talking, you're not talking about almost any change to this intersection. So at this point, we talk about lots of change, but at this point, this intersection, because of where the property lines are at, now, if the property line's set back and farther back, then it would affect it more. But this particular intersection doesn't have much of a change or effect at all.
Because the property line goes out into the middle of the street.
Correct,
Is that what you're saying?
correct.
But that doesn't make any sense. Why'd we build a street on somebody's private property?
That actually happens quite often, because back in the days when many of the days when the county put the roads in, they put them along property lines. And so even though there was county, there was access for county right of way, the county didn't necessarily own the property that it put those roads on. And so as the city came along and started to inherit that, and as people have developed and we've developed, streets and whatnot, we've asked people, we've worked with people to try and get them to dedicate that property, because there's no point for them to be paying property tax on it, since there's a road there and they can't use it anyway. But there are still some places where we haven't really, where this one has remained undeveloped as far as that particular piece of property.
Southwest.
We haven't, really approached that property
You'll
owner
see
about
back
it.
behind there, the property line is farther down and would solve that problem. And when this develops, that problem will be solved. But even if you take the other side and you kind of draw that measurement out, you have, I mean, we talk about it. This is a huge safety issue to have off of the corner. But I would dare bet that 75%, if not more, of our intersections don't have a problem. But when we do, it is a problem. And so at that point, you kind of look at it and you say, okay, well, what else is gonna be built there? I mean, we have, at this point, is a power box. There's not gonna be a tree there. We're just asking that a tree not be planted.
Do you have some examples of some of the hot issues or hot spots?
Well, let's go back to the site triangle one up on Sarah. Now this one, when we come in here and do the same diagram here from the corner.
Which one's?
I'm gonna drop on this one. We come back 20 feet, approximately, and zoom back out, so you put.
It's hard to tell elevation, but that's rather elevated as well, right?
Up, up or down?
So at that point, you look at this one, and you can draw a line across the intersection, and that's what's effect, but this is as far into the yard as it goes. So as long as the tiers, and the tiers are probably okay, but then we have trees planted here that if you're coming out of this, you can't see. So trees inside of this park strip, so if you draw a straight line
30 feet.
through there,
Right.
then you're just asking for no trees in here or here. That's all we're asking. I mean, it's really not as big of an ask as you might think when you start to think 30 feet. So when you're looking at it, you're looking at, 35, 40 feet. I didn't do that math, but you're looking at 30 plus feet to come off of the intersection on in a park strip, which is park strips owned by the city anyway. So we're just not asking not to plant trees in that site triangle of the park strip and up to 20 feet into their property, so that we can see, so that when this car comes down Center Street, I should have shared this, Michael, I apologize.
You're okay.
So anyway,
The car comes down Sarah?
when your car comes down Sarah and they can't see on Spring Creek Parkway, that's a problem. One, the elevation, one, the curvature of the road. But primarily, if you will drive that road coming down on south of Sarah Street, you will know and recognize the problem immediately.
Okay, so the
And
solution,
that is the solution, to take out trees that are within that spot.
but the solution on this one was four-way stop.
The four-way stop is warranted because of a larger site triangle than what this one is. This is still a safety issue. The site triangle for a stop sign is 120 feet instead of
can't
30 feet.
remember.
Anyway,
It's quite a
it's a larger triangle, and that does include even part of the house in that triangle. So at that point, the four-way wouldn't be changed. But even with this one, you sit parked at that stop sign and you cannot see traffic coming down Spring Creek Parkway. It is dangerous. You
And-
don't
and
do
if there was
something
a
in this
12-inch
one,
tree
is a
there,
problem.
If there was a 12-inch tree inside of that, that would not be a problem.
Well, it's the tree there's a line of trees
Yep.
and the foliage, and these trees aren't large enough to have all of that foliage 14
8 to 14 feet.
14 feet on the street side.
Yeah,
So at that point, these trees aren't tall enough, they haven't grown enough to then
Allow you to see the
to
stop.
allow you to see the stop sign.
But we said trees, period.
Yes, that is
So that
correct.
doesn't even
But
matter.
30
That's
feet.
correct.
from now on.
Because
Yes.
it grows,
And if there's safety issues, even, like I said, even if we didn't say nothing is grandfathered, if there's safety issues, we could still approach them and say, I'm sorry, that tree's gotta go.
Yeah, can I share a few thoughts? After you-
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. I thought you were starting. You share thoughts all you want. But you're right. We try to keep the responsibility on the planning commission.
So first of all, I want to clarify, I measured my tree and I think it's okay. It might need to be trimmed up though, but it is so far off the road that I've gone around and looked at other places, not the entire city or anything. My proposal would be, and let me tell you why first. I agree with the safety. I think we need to be aware of that. But I also don't think, and I read through after what Ryan said last week about you need to know these 6 things or whatever I did, and I did research on all of them. And in fact, one of those actually talked about planting trees, if you get into it, but I think that, one, we don't want to, as a city, be known for, we're chopping down all these trees. I think we need to be careful with that. And so that's one of my reasons that I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. I think we don't wanna be known for that. And I think that would upset a lot of people.
And do you wanna hold that till we get to those paragraphs?
Well, whatever,
Or
if you want me
whatever.
to, I can.
No, I'm asking you, whatever,
But,
whatever.
well, my proposal is, and I think where there's safety hazards, I think, or concerns, I think we definitely need to consider that. Two, I think we need to be careful where there's corners where there's trees that have been there for a long time and they're big trees and those are gonna be very expensive to remove. And for us to say, guess what? You've enjoyed those trees for 40 years, but now you gotta pay to have those removed. I think that's not gonna go over well for citizens of this city either. So I think we need to be careful about who pays for what, personally. And my proposal is that we don't make a general statement that nothing is grandfathered in. I think there needs to be exceptions. For example, if my tree were a little bit further out, it's still nowhere near the line of sight. And if our purpose for this new rule is for safety, if it's not a safety hazard, I don't think we should go around telling people you gotta pay to have your trees cut down. It doesn't matter. I think that we need to consider some things being grandfathered in if we're gonna do this.
Okay, let's keep that in mind as we go through the changes right here.
Tell us, let's take a look at yours and let's look to kind of show what your address there and I'll pull it up.
515 south. 330 west. Did you find it?
530 south,
515 south, 330 west, near Furman Drive. Yeah, so.
okay.
The next corner down, yeah, 330, yeah, at the corner of 500, basically. Right there, that one right there, yeah, that's it.
It faces 330 west, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but then that's the tree.
Oh, there's the tree.
And there's the parking strip that's, how wide did we decide, Scarlett?
I think it's, is it
14 probably feet wide?
I don't really remember, because it was quite a few years ago when that subdivision went in, but I know it's wide.
And maybe the tree is in the way if the property line goes curved like that. I just measured from the corner out with a.
We don't measure from the curve either. The triangle goes to the.
Okay, and that's what I
Both
just,
the property lines straight where they meet, that's where.
So that trunk is farther back here, that tree is not in the site.
right,
triangle.
that's what I
So that's
said.
not so that wouldn't be an issue.
Right,
for that.
but if we had planted it 2 feet further out, there's a 14-foot parking strip. And I don't think there's gonna be any concern with anybody being able to see.
14 foot on this side, but this is clearly not. 14 feet
Absolutely,
on
and we
this
don't have trees on either side, so for us, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to use common sense
Right.
and not make a lot of people mad.
But let's look across the street.
Right,
And this one,
is probably in the,
it could.
and maybe the
could
next
be-
one, maybe.
Not this one. Not
No.
this one, because you pull it out here and you go, this one probably.
I think it is, for sure.
So at
Yeah.
that point, there is this one.
And so now we're gonna tell the neighbor, we're gonna tell the Weises, you have to cut that tree down, you have to pay for it. And see, I have a hard time with that, cause that's been there for a long time and nobody's ever said anything about it.
But it's been in violation, if I'm not correct. It's been in violation ever since it was installed.
Not ever since it was installed, because when it was installed, it was probably tiny. It's a good example of what happens when you start out in
Okay,
rows
so it's
and rolls
more than,
out.
you think it's bigger than 12 inches then?
I haven't been down
It
there
is,
to look at it.
I would guess it
So,
is, I would
Okay.
guess it is.
Okay, so
It's close, but
in this case,
my tree isn't, by the way, either that, but it doesn't matter. You can't have a tree in the area. It doesn't matter how wide it is,
right,
right?
That would be true on trees. Yeah, that's, yes.
We're talking about other items, 12 inches, but
So,
tree,
right.
it doesn't matter. It can't be there no matter how.
Because
how-
it will grow and have foliage.
Right.
You can't
So
control.
that
a
tree goes
tree
no
that-
matter how wide the trunk.
well,
If we're,
Now, keep in mind, we're not a police state and we're not looking, that's not, the question comes is you can only enforce what ordinance you have, but you don't have to enforce every spot of the ordinance to there. So there is a balance.
and that's
between-
why I'm saying we
Saying-
shouldn't make a blanket statement. We're not gonna grandfather anything in. Because if that's the case, we just say, change the sign rule down on the highway.
Yeah.
Right.
We gotta tell them all, you gotta take those out, you gotta start from scratch and meet our code, and it's
So-
at your expense.
At this one, the city can remove that tree at any time.
Right.
If it determines that there's a reason, we
And,
can.
and
Now, you're saying we can remove it, but your issue, as I understand, is that you say, well, yes, you can remove it, but now when you say it's at their cost, that's where your concern comes. Is that correct?
yes, I have two concerns. One is if it's at their cost. And they haven't done anything wrong and now we're gonna make them pay, it could be hundreds of dollars for some trees.
oh, more than 100.
Well,
I know what that costs.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep,
And two, if it really isn't a safety hazard, I don't know, even though it's in that triangle. Like my tree, which isn't in the triangle, but if it were a few feet over, it would be. But there's a 14-foot parking strip on the north side so there's not a tree in that parking strip. There's plenty of view to be able to see that. I don't know why we'd make a homeowner tear out a tree that's not causing a problem.
I don't know that we would do that.
Well, that's what this is saying. That's what I'm saying.
It says that if there's a problem, we can force the issue to have the tree come out.
It does say that, so,
I mean, that's a reason why we would do. I mean,
So let me
so that's all,
let me address part of that, and it will actually answer Bob's question about the waiver, because I went back and pulled that up. And it was actually what I thought. This is just being very transparent in the sign code, but this is actually a general rule for all of the city code. The city's failure to take appropriate action against violations of this chapter shall not be a waiver of any of the rights of the city as set forth in this chapter. That means that if we can't get to it to enforce it, or whatever the cause that we didn't enforce it, that doesn't, we're not giving up our rights to at some point enforce it. But it doesn't mean that we have to enforce everything every minute that we find out about it.
So if I understand you correctly, it's not to go around and tell people to tear down their trees. It's
No.
for in the future so that we don't continue to have this problem.
and to be able to solve problems that we may currently have.
yeah.
But we don't have a budget, nor will the council approve a budget to approve tearing out every tree. It's just not
Doesn't make sense.
reasonable or going to happen. It's
So
not gonna
it's
happen.
really if and when there is a safety issue, then we want to fix that.
Absolutely, we want to.
but that's not the way the code is.
Right, and I agree with that. That's common sense, and I agree with that. And as long as it says that, so that's what we do, I'm good with it.
So can I just make a comment? I think Shelley's made a point that I was gonna make too, is that this is, in my mind, these are great guidelines for any new construction that's gonna prevent a problem in the future. For anything that's existing, we need to identify it as a legitimate safety issue before we have any heartburn with anybody in the city. We're not gonna go and just start enforcing this on every tree that's in violation, because it may very well not be a safety issue. And there may be some safety issues that need to be addressed that aren't trees. So I think the key is that this is a really great guideline to keep people out of trouble in the future. If they follow this, they're not ever gonna have to worry about cutting down a tree that they've loved for 85 years. Okay, so it's gonna remove future problems, and then any problem that is a legitimate problem now needs to be taken care of if it's a safety issue. And that's what I think the message needs to be, and it's not necessarily worded like that, but I think that that's what your intent as a city is to follow that kind of a process. If it's a safety issue, we're gonna deal with it.
Well, it says, the last line of C, it says, and it's not just talking about trees, but it says that list of things, and then it says which interferes with the safety of pedestrians or vehicle traffic. So if it's not interfering with the safety of the pedestrians or the vehicle traffic, we're probably not gonna,
Why would you?
but
Okay, but at our last meeting, that wasn't the sense that I got. I'll be honest with you.
That's one
So
reason.
we're maybe putting Scarlett on the spot too, but I said, well, most of my trees gotta be cut down, and you said yes, and I thought that doesn't make sense.
And that's why we stopped.
So that's why-
we stopped the meeting.
Yeah, and that's why I just wanna clarify that, that,
you don't think your tree is a safety problem. But if the traffic in the area changed so that your tree became a safety problem, then yes,
if my tree was a safety problem, I would agree 100%.
right.
My point was last time we met, it's not a safety hazard at all because there's a 14-foot parking strip. That's all I'm saying. As long as we're using common sense and we're just concerned about where the safety hazards and not making everybody cut down trees and spend a lot of money and all, then I'm okay with that as long as that's what we're doing. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. I want to ask one more question of staff. When was the last time we had trees removed or requested to remove? When did the city staff ask somebody to remove a tree for safety issues? How many years has it been?
We removed
Last-
four summer, fall of last year. In Cherrywood for safety of sidewalk safety and because it was pushing that up. So we did that. We removed, when we added the trail, we removed 4, 5 there.
How many?
We've removed, we probably removed a dozen within the last 12 months.
And how many of those fell, and how many of those did the responsibility fall on the property owners to take care of the problem? Was it all done by the city or did they?
I think on that one, now that's because we were doing it on ours, but I think we paid for all of those.
Okay,
I mean, could we? We did have, since I've been here, we did have one over off of Gateway Drive that we did ask them to cut theirs down, and they cut the top off and cut it off and just saw it off and it was on 485,
485, I think,
and was it
or
Fifth South?
I honestly don't remember which one.
Were those old tall trees that were at the corner there?
No, it was a shorter tree, but it was right next to the stop sign. So at that point, you get that close and you can't see a stop sign either. I mean, that's
At
part of the
Third
problem.
South, I
Sure.
think.
Was it Third?
I think so.
It could be. Anyway, we did have one of those. We did say, hey, it's really in the sight view. You just gotta cut off. And so they topped it and cut it off and it worked and that, they have a stump or I don't know whether they've taken out the stump. I think they have.
I think they did.
Anyway, but so I think in my time, I've known maybe 1 or 2 that we've had the resident do.
okay, so we're not,
We've asked quite a few of them to go out and trim them.
We do ask that.
We asked a lot of them to go trim them. But that's part of the reason why from now on, we're saying not to put them in there because a lot of people will say, well, I don't have the means to do that. And I sympathize with them because I
Right.
understand that. And so we're just kind of saying, okay, in the future, we need to just not even have them put trees in there.
Right, but there's the key, you're saying in the future and from now on.
that's.
But the
that's
thing of it is,
grandfathered.
Bob, if that tree is a true safety problem, that person really needs to do it, whether this paragraph.
And I agree with that, like you just said, if it's a true safety problem, I agree with that 100%, I don't have a problem with that, so that's good. what do we do to make sure when a new builder, a homeowner builds a home, that they know that rule to make sure they don't put trees in the parking strip or whatever?
Put it in the code.
If it's in a plat.
I know,
if
but
it's in a-
think about how much code, I mean,
We're
who's read all the
asked
code?
them- We asked them to show it on their
Yeah.
site plans now.
Okay,
Yeah, on the
good,
site
that's all I'm
plan-
asking.
And if you review a site, some of the site plans you'll review, that's why it's critical to have a planning commission that has some.
So
longevity.
we review site plans
Not for
for,
individual houses, but
that's what we're concerned about.
site, well, some of your site plan review will look at, that's why on
Multifamily.
subdivision plats, we're going to ask them to start showing. So we've got the clear view triangles for the corners. Technically, they're all site triangles, but so that everybody kind of keeps them in their own mind. Clear view on the corners, but then you have these site triangles that happen when you've got curves and their distance from an intersection. Those are the ones that you will see when, a subdivision comes in. Cause we will have the developers look at how they're laying their stuff out and make sure that it's.
Okay.
Yes.
That will be in preliminary plat, right? Not in final plat.
Cause final plat won't come to
You
you,
don't see it.
right?
But in preliminary plat, you will now see the construction drawings, which you didn't used to see at all.
Which includes landscaping.
It well, construction drawings
Okay. I
don't
understand.
always include
I retract that,
landscaping, but so depending on the project. But,
They'll have clear view.
yeah,
They'll have clear
they'll
view
have to
triangles.
talk to us about the site triangles,
Okay.
yes.
So I think we've got the last two examples.
Well, if we
before
put
us.
this in, if we don't put this in, then we don't have that,
Right,
Two.
and
I
this is
mean-
just a recommendation of the city council.
yeah.
Can I make one other?
Yeah,
comment?
please go ahead, Bill.
So, we're reviewing the code. And at this point, we have an opportunity as a planning commission to make a recommendation to alter or make additional changes when we send it up, right?
Mhm.
So my thinking on, when we were talking about the Third East and Spring Creek Parkway, that corner there. I did not realize that the property line where you start measuring is out in the middle of the road. So if that is the case,
Then the site
then-
triangle is coming.
then we need to make an alteration to, or an addition to the code that says something like, where there's a road on a public road on private property, that site triangle will be measured based on the edge of the road, not down the middle of the road. Or something like that, so that we have some way to enforce some real site view on a corner where there's a safety issue.
So this one will solve itself when that development occurs on that lot. And they have to then finish because it's only a partial road. It's only a partial road.
Third East is only partial road, or Spring Creek
Spring Creek
Parkway.
in that section is only
Both of
partial. I
them,
think both
actually.
sides. I
In
think
that,
both sides
in
are,
that particular area, both sides,
both, to answer your question, both are partial. So when they finish, they'll have to take off the corner, finish that, and that piece will become city. The minute they develop, that'll become,
So
Dedicated to the city.
we're gonna leave a safety issue out there until somebody decides to develop that property. That's what you're saying.
we do
So
that all
so
the
that
time.
somebody, well, it's.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, the city's not gonna pay for it. We're gonna have the developer pay for it. And we will wait, and even if it's unsafe, we will be okay with that, so the developer gets to pay for it.
At some points, unless the priority of such becomes, such that we would take the project on, without that. So I can't say that's 100%, but I would say that is the norm. But there are times that the city will widen a road, prior to development so that it can solve safety issues. And there is times that we'll do that.
mhm.
So it's not a never, but it is a standard. The standard would be that we would wait for development to solve that. at that point, but if there became the volume of traffic that necessitated us to do that, we could certainly look at that. But that one, we don't even own the property, so lots of times we only do it when we own the property.
Yeah, but they're out of compliance now.
So,
That corner's out of compliance now
Even with the,
right, I mean,
because of the property.
right, I mean, what's this guy letting the city drive on his land?
Well, he was here recently and said he does not plan to
Yeah,
develop
exactly. He said he
anytime
didn't.
soon.
Yeah,
And
Talked to
I
his-
think we
I talked
have
to his
heard
wife.
the same hotspot a few times. So how do we request a traffic study at that intersection? I mean, we just had one
Don't
a
even
block or
know the
two
plan.
away.
Each one is $5,000. How many would you like to do?
Well, I mean,
Everything's subject to budget, right? So
sure, then how do we fix the issue here at this corner?
doesn't Spring Creek Parkway stop at that? Isn't Spring Creek Parkway the road that stops at Third East?
no,
It
30
it
stops?
continues
they used to.
up Providence.
They used to be,
Oh.
I think it's
Third East
Stops
stops
there.
now,
Spring Creek goes through.
okay.
Spring Creek goes through now, all the way from, Gateway, all the way up the mountains.
Okay,
That is something interesting, though, that the city doesn't wanna fork out some money to do that. So we need to be careful not having citizens fork out some money to do that.
I didn't say we
Well,
wouldn't.
if it's a safety hazard either way, for the city or for the citizen, anyway.
But we can't go from imperfection to perfection. We'll never get to perfection, but we will incrementally increase and identify areas that of improvement and
Sure.
modification. And that's what we did. That's what we did with Spring Creek Parkway and Sarah. We will incrementally increase to that. Can we go through and fix every problem tomorrow? No, we just don't have the budget to do that.
Right.
That's not what our public
But
expects.
that
us to
might
do.
be what some of the citizens would say. But anyway, yeah.
yep,
Yeah,
But-
and we're just saying, if you're doing it at Spring Creek Parkway and Sarah, then why not Spring Creek Parkway and Third East?
okay, so we need to change the code. We need to change the code to take these
We
things
need to
into account.
recommend, we can recommend,
Can I just ask one other question really quick? Just on a roundabout, well, how does the property line work on a roundabout? Cause I know some of the roundabouts have things that are much taller than 2 feet at the edges of them.
Which roundabout would you like to see? Paul?
First South and Gateway Drive.
Okay. Let's go there.
I'm just curious how that.
You see at that point, the property lines are behind the sidewalks, which have the curvature to match the roundabout.
So how would you draw the line for the clear view or whatever?
But you still come out from that,
to the middle of the road.
from that
It's
property
still-
line and that property
Two
line.
perpendicular.
Yeah.
It's
make
at
the
that
point.
point drawn at a 30-foot, the setback one, and drawn between there. So we'd go back setback wise. So mine was a simplification to show how a corner lot would work rather than the exact way to measure, but we would measure setbacks, right? We measure, and I think the rules talked about setbacks rather than,
Setbacks for the building?
20 feet
So-
from the setback.
The point, though, doesn't follow the curve. You take the two,
Right.
you
Take
go,
two perpendicular
yeah,
lines and
see,
extend them.
yes.
Okay,
From,
so we take the setback and draw the line between the setback. And we extend that out, so we're extending, so the 30 feet. Or the setback is the defined dimension. And then here's the 30 feet setback,
Right.
30 feet.
so
That's the
30
30
feet
feet.
setback, and then we take and use that to project the restriction from.
And one of the problems that illustration has that we're correcting, I mean, that illustration's been used for quite a long time, but we're correcting that with the new illustrations that we're going to put in there. Ryan, can you stay where you are? So the side triangle makes it look like you can't do it on private property, but you can put anything you want out there in the public property is almost what that looks like. So we're going to shade that part of Park Strip so that people understand but that is part of the side triangle.
I think it's great for the future.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. I'll be quiet.
So if somebody planted just off of that sight line in the parkway, and the canopy on the tree was gonna be 20 feet across, as long as they kept that up high enough, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so there are some things that sound like we would like to see in the code. I hope we can get to all of them tonight. As I go to 10.9.2, which I think is where we ought to start, we got some naming changes. Then we've got another section here, B, and I just want to read this. I think we're all going to agree with it. 10.9.2B, Clearview areas should be designed to provide adequate vision of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. A clear view shall be maintained at the intersection of every street, whether public or private, and at the intersection of every driveway with a public or private street. The clear view provisions are considered life safety standards and shall supersede any conflicting provisions of this title. Is there anything we need to take out of that or reword?
I don't think so.
Is this where the grandfathering gets axed?
no, the grandfathering
Okay.
in the next
No.
one.
Great. Okay, let's go to C. No provisions of this section shall be construed to permit the continuance of non-conforming trees, shrubs, plant growth. Okay, that's the grandfathering clause, okay? Fence wall or other screening material or other obstruction which interferes with the safety of pedestrian or vehicle traffic.
Okay, and that. So you're saying worded like that, it's saying which interferes with the safety, so if it doesn't, we don't have to worry about it. As long as we interpret it that way, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like we were interpreting it that way last, 2 weeks ago.
Right,
Okay.
and that's really why we finished the meeting. It was like, this is.
That's why it's good to go
and.
and read it like this. That's why it's good to go and read it as it stands, because yeah, that's
Yeah,
what we interpret it.
okay. I'm
Okay,
fine
so
with
it's not gonna be grandfathering, but there's no compliance, so it's really. I mean, there is no compliance on this.
Well,
One tree in 5 years.
safety is the
Right.
compliance.
This does expand what we would do, so at this point, we've had one that we've asked them to do, because it was a violation and had a problem. This does, in all transparency, this does expand the ability to solve some of the safety problems we currently have that we may not have access to be able to do currently with the current code.
So my concern is that we are gonna scare the citizens of the city by not grandfathering things in. I think that the city has enough in their ordinances to approach a homeowner and say, we've got a safety issue here. We need you to remove trees. I think that's already in the code. It's not in this section of the code, but it's in the code already. And we would all agree as citizens of the city of Providence, if there's a safety issue that the individuals that own the property involved are contacted directly and asked to take care and help with the issue. I think we need to remove the whole continuance thing.
Continuously, what does that mean?
Not, the word, the continuance, no provisions that you're gonna construe any conforming tree, shrub. Okay, I think C ought to be completely struck it out, okay? What do you think about that?
That's the part that says which interferes
I
with the
think-
safety of pedestrians.
That
We
needs to
need that
stay in
part.
there
That
somewhere.
needs to stay.
Okay, what about the continuance? Because I've got 5 trees on my property that are in
Non-conforming.
non-conforming.
But it says,
They're not safety.
And I've had trees taken down lately. Those trees will cost me somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000.
they're not permitted to continue there if they interfere with the safety of pedestrians and vehicular or vehicle traffic. So the question is, do your trees
According to
interfere with the safety of pedestrians and vehicle traffic?
the definition here said in the previous code says, yes, they are. They're over 12 inches in diameter.
No, I don't think that's what we're
But
saying.
that's not, this code is saying
Just
that
if they're in that very,
if
that
they
corner margin.
interfere with the safety, they're not,
Okay. No
It's
provision
not-
of this shall be construed to allow,
So,
to permit the continuance non-conforming.
Right.
Right, but read the whole sentence.
But
Read the whole-
the last part's very important, which interferes with safety of pedestrians. and
Right,
vehicle
you gotta read the whole thing. Whole sentence.
Of pedestrians or vehicle traffic, probably not of vehicle traffic, probably.
Yeah,
That's right, it's important.
But now, does there need to be just another statement that says, starting whatever date it's approved?
It's a safety issue and we can't do that.
No, in the
All
future.
properties must follow
Must
this
comply.
policy and,
In the future,
I don't know how you word it, but.
All new construction,
well, in the future,
New
if you
development.
pass this, then they can't put trees in there
Right,
to start with. So then we won't have to come back to them
right,
in 6 years or whatever
right,
and say, please either trim that tree up or remove it. And,
right.
and so we're
I think-
hoping that that corrects
But-
it. But this part is to say, is just to be very transparent to people that if something on the property is in the area that is considered a safety hazard and it is causing a safety hazard, then the city can say,
Right,
just because it's been there for 30 years, it has now turned into a safety hazard and we can't have that continue.
so maybe that's what Brian's saying, he wants it worded that way. That-
that's what it says.
But it does, I think it does say that, but maybe not as
to
clearly.
permit the continuance of non-conforming trees.
Right, plant shrubs.
Okay, the
plant
the
growth,
challenge we've got
walls,
here,
Screening material.
the
or
challenge
other
we've got here is
construction.
just like any other code that we've got. And when we create a code, from that day forward, it's enforceable. This paragraph, to me, seems that it goes backward in time, so that anything that is non-conforming before
Is
is
still
still
non-conforming.
non-conforming afterwards.
Correct, but
But they're not gonna do anything
there's not
about
a
it.
period after tree. There's a comma, and
Right,
then that
right.
sentence continues on, or any other obstruction which interferes with safety, pedestrian or vehicle traffic. So you gotta read the whole sentence, the whole sentence is part of the code that says any of these things, growth, fences, plants, screening material like signs, which are an obstruction, are gonna be a problem, but if it's not an obstruction, it's not a problem.
Brian, do we have obstructions of this nature in our historic district? Near,
Yes,
Yes.
near Brian's home, are we chopping down trees that are 50 feet wide and? I mean.
That's a big.
I don't know,
That's
if it's
a
50
tree.
feet wide.
That's
so,
red.
I
They,
mean,
they don't get any
Big
water,
tree.
but they get big.
Brian's assessed his neighborhood, would you agree that the potential is there for loss of many historic trees?
I think many is an exaggeration. Is there some? Absolutely.
On 3 blocks from my place down to Third West, there are 22 trees, if you look on both sides of the street, that are out of conformance, non-conforming.
Are they, are all
But
of
are
those,
they?
are all of those considered,
safety issue.
interference with safety?
obstacles that interfere with the safety of pedestrians and vehicles? How many of them are obstacles that interfere with safety of pedestrians and
You
vehicles?
got me. I mean, you look at them, it is, if you've got a tree on each side of the driveway, is that a safety issue or not?
The minute you hit a kid, the trees probably need to come out.
Okay, so are we doing this for insurance purposes and liability?
No.
Okay,
just say,
no,
what are we doing?
I wanna save the kid before we have the liability problem.
No, I'm asking, is insurance, are there insurance companies involved? City,
No.
No.
are there insurance companies involved that have asked to step in?
No,
No.
Okay, we got some complaints. Okay,
we have
in my view, the complaints are fine. But the complaints, if the complaints are from 1% of this population of the city, they do not deserve to be extended to cover 100% of property owners. 100% of the people in this city. The
Brian,
1% doesn't work.
what's more important to you, a tree or the potential of a child being hurt? Right? I mean, that's really what we're
That's a
debating.
male, female question.
No, it isn't.
It is.
I know.
Because-
It's safety versus,
Okay, so should we make everything safe now? We can't. It's not in the budget. So we just live with it.
Well, we should make what we can safe.
Okay, so.
But what they're saying, Brian, is they're not going to enforce this policy in every corner of the whole city. They're going to enforce it if there is
A legitimate,
If it
an
interferes
obstruction
with
that
the
interferes
safety.
with the safety of, so if they can go and because of the number of complaints or whatever, that is a corner, that's covering the stop sign, or that you can't see oncoming traffic, that's a tree we're gonna remove. Not everyone that's in that clear zone.
Okay,
That's what it's saying.
let's move on down to, anything in, D 1, 2, or 3. It looks like there's some corrections there. And some changes of wording. Well. Can we get, go back to the clear site? When we're talking about Mr. Hankey's property, that clear site is based on his property lines.
Right.
Okay, and that's great. So based on his property lines. Now, if we go to Third East, those property lines are much further out. Which one should we do? Inside the future parkway? Or inside the future parking strip? Or today, where they're at today? And Third East, property lines are out in the street. So I think that code needs to be changed. Because,
Well, that's where, Brian, even if what, we actually work with that property owner continually through the summer to remind them that that fence cannot be, cannot turn into a wall, that it has to be kept open. But that is where the city's code enforcement, even though that fence may well be, well, may not be in the technical Clearview area, a fence is creating a nuisance. And so then we approach it from a different code.
okay,
Yeah, so what you're saying is if there's a safety hazard for pedestrians or vehicles, with or without this, we're gonna deal with it,
Yes,
right?
it may not
I mean,
be,
whether-
it may not be
whether it
using
meets-
this
right.
code. It may be using the nuisance code, or
Right.
maybe be using, cause maybe doing another code,
It may
but
not be applicable to this code, but if it's safety, we're still gonna deal with it.
yes,
okay.
as best as we can,
As
Given
much
our-
tools as we have in the toolbox to do that.
yeah, given our limited resources and people.
Okay, so number 4, tree, go ahead, Bob.
while we're here, so are we or are we not able to make a recommendation about the situation like on Third East and Spring Creek? Where there's a public road on private property, can we say that the Clearview area needs to be calculated based on the edge of the road as opposed to the property line?
I think you're getting on such a tangent of an individual that's far out here. If you draw from the other wing, is there gonna be a problem? Or if we draw 20 feet from the other spot, are we still not gonna have an issue that the tree's not there? There's no tree
It's
there.
not a tree. No, I'm not worried about the tree.
It's the fence.
It's the fence. So I mean, you're saying we can't enforce it. It's not our property. It's not,
No, I'm saying
but it's a
this
safety
code
issue.
can't enforce it, but the nuisance
But-
code can.
We as a body are gonna make a
Right, you
recommendation,
can make that
recommendation
if you'd like.
to the city council. And they can say, these guys are crazy, or they can say, that's really a good idea. But we're trying to do something that would allow the city to make an intersection, and probably more than one, safe. Because the property line is in the middle of the road. You said 80% of the streets in town have that same issue?
Oh, not anymore, because as we've worked with them, as we've made improvements and stuff, people have dedicated that property to us, so our right of ways are established. But starting from the beginning of the city, there was probably quite a few. But as time has gone on, there really are very few that are left that have this particular problem. And most of them that are in undeveloped areas. That's why there's very few undeveloped areas there.
Okay,
I'm just trying to understand what you'd like to have it done here. So at this point, we have a little anomaly here that is the triangle, that the property goes out to the corner.
Well, I'm concerned because where do we set the line? We've got a clear view
But
suggestion
honestly,
here.
that's not really an anomaly, because we're gonna take the lines out to that corner like that anyway.
that's where you draw your 20 feet from that corner.
Right, that's
Yeah.
why we're including the park strip, that's why in the new graphic, the park strip is shown as being in that.
But this one is, if the 30 by 30 here is a lot different than on Bob's corner, where it's 30 by 30, right? Because it's 30 by 30 on Bob's corner. Now we extend that 30 by 30 out past, out to the curb, out to the street.
Right.
And so it gets a lot bigger than 30 by 30. That is the clear view, not the property owner, but the clear view area for the safety. So how much safety do we need on that corner that we're looking at? Do we need 30 by 30? That's what we're proposing. Or do we need 50 by 50? Or what do we need on that corner? And let's treat the corner across the street the same way. Because the one across the street's fine. Kitty corner, is that ours?
This one, the diagonal wise has the
Yep.
same problem.
Okay,
This one, I think that's ours. So
right, but
that
the property line is back further.
This is the actual property line here.
Right, so we've got a 20 by 20,
We do
extend it out to the curb, that's all fine. So how do we handle the other two corners? That's only 30 by 30 that they have to worry
So
about.
are you saying that where there's development or sidewalk, it should be treated differently than where there isn't?
That's
Like
what,
one should be 30 feet and one should be 50 feet.
what I'm saying is that the code that we're suggesting
Right,
treats them differently.
right, and that's what I'm saying. So should there be a different?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, there should be a difference. This corner here is 30 by 30 clear view. Bob's corner is 50 by 50.
So if your property line's inside a sidewalk, it's 30 feet. If it's outside a sidewalk or in the street or whatever, it should be 50 feet or something is what you're saying.
Yep, there should be a difference, and I don't know if it's exact numbers or proportions or whatever, but
Yeah.
we need to treat this
some
corner.
way-
This corner is getting off easy. They have to provide a 30 by 30, based on those property lines.
So you want to add more restriction to
And
this?
that one,
That's-
and that one in my mind should be 50 by 50, because that's what we're asking any other property across the street north. We're asking for a 50 by 50 there almost, well, maybe not full, but
So you either do
Because you're
that,
adding the sidewalk and that.
Adding the sidewalk
space in.
and the park
Right.
strip, yeah. So. I
So
mean,
I think in the
You
code.
need something, the goal is to have a way to see traffic and, or people walking.
so you either do that, you do maybe 30 and then 50 if the property line's
Maybe.
in the street or whatever versus behind a sidewalk, inside a sidewalk.
So this is
Or-
undeveloped parcels, so maybe you could define something with undeveloped parcels?
Yeah,
Because once
because
they're
an undeveloped parcel's always gonna have the property on the outside of it, right?
Well, no,
Not
developed,
always, I mean,
developed parcels where there's no sidewalk and gutter, no park strip.
right, where the street hasn't been fully wide and there's not a house or development occurred.
So
Right.
is curb and gutter
Well-
the answer to our
No.
conundrum?
Well, curb and gutter will eventually go in.
Well, some places the code says they're exempt
From curb and gutter, that's but
in the code.
they wouldn't be exempt from the measurement.
Well, let me ask you, on that corner,
Sorry.
theoretically, people are not supposed to be walking on the west side of that road. Because there's no sidewalk.
Theoretically correct.
Mhm.
And
And so,
theoretically, it's great until somebody gets hurt. That's what we just talked about.
Well, but
It
even
is
so,
hard to
that's,
see
that's
approaching
that's
cars.
fair.
But we're
Crossing
talking
or not.
pedestrian and vehicle.
Yeah.
Vehicles.
So
the-
In
Yeah.
this case, it's vehicle.
it's vehicles.
Yeah,
Right.
I can't drive up Spring Creek and see anybody coming from the south when there's grass growing up that fence. Just can't. till my front end is clear out in the road.
And it's a two-way stop, right?
Because that,
No, oh yeah, two-way stop.
Yeah,
It
two-way
stops
stop.
Two-way
clearly.
stop. And Mr. Hibbard is doing his best to keep that down, and he's been a valuable citizen there.
sometimes, I mean,
Sometimes he is hard.
And maybe we already have other ordinances that resolve that issue, I
Right.
don't know, but I'm just saying. If I'm understanding what Brian's saying is you do two different, which also makes sense. Because there's definitely a difference between those two corners and how you would measure a clear.
where the goal is to provide a clear view, then you have to treat it differently. If it doesn't have a curb and gutter,
Okay.
because your measurement is it's really unfair. It's not providing you the clear view.
Yeah, more restrictive. I don't have an argument with more restrictive. We're just figuring at least if we get that, then we're making progress to safety and we're just trying to work towards that. I'm just trying to understand where you're at, but
That's, I mean, that's where I.
give us your wording.
I
I'm
think it's
I'm
important.
on board.
We can do that. I've got that in my notes.
Okay,
All right.
I think we had that, I think that would.
We beat that one to death, finally.
We can recommend that. I don't know.
Okay.
We're just recommending all
Yes.
of this.
Yeah.
That's what we'll come
Yeah,
out
we're
of
gonna
it.
recommend, yeah, that's, I
I
think that's.
wanna go to number 5 for a minute, we may have to go back to 4. Tree canopies or other growth shall not block signs, signal. Is that covered in other code, nuisance code or whatever? Can we strike that number 5?
No,
What's wrong with that in there? I see. what you're saying.
Tree canopies or other, it's redundant. If it's in the nuisance code, let's just go to the nuisance code. If the tree canopy is improper and gets in the way of signals or streetlights or signs, that's a nuisance. So why do we have it here and in the nuisance code as well?
This is really is a clear view.
yeah,
Nuisance is a different level of criteria to enforce. This one's very specific and you can,
yes,
draw a line, measure, draw a line. This one's a lot easier to enforce in Clearview than it is proving a nuisance.
I agree, I think it needs to stay, and because in 4 above that, you're supposed to trim the trees 8 feet above the sidewalk and 12 feet or 14 feet above the street, right? So that you have a view. And then if that definition doesn't provide the view that you need for signs and signals or streetlights, then you do whatever you have to be able to see those things. I think it's important to keep that because somebody could cut it 14 feet, and if you're coming down a hill 14 feet still below you, you still can't see the sign. So it needs to be in there so that we clearly state that we need to be able to see signs, street signs, signals, lights.
It'd be a lot easier to find here too, when you're looking for that statement.
Okay, then I'm gonna ask that we change number 5 to read, not tree canopies or other growth, but any obstructions in the clear view. Any obstruction shall not block signs, signals, or street.
No obstruction,
No obstructions. Not the tree canopies, let's cover
or
everything here.
growth or anything.
Right. And we're talking about, retaining walls. We're talking about fences. None of that should block signs, signals, or streetlights.
Or signs.
We shouldn't be picking on the trees. On a
I
tree.
think we have that just above in C.
Don't offend the trees.
We have that list.
This becomes a problem when it wasn't a problem once and now it is. It's something that's growing that gets to be there, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what's your other example of something that might fit into that?
Oh,
Well, so there's a sign. I took a picture of it earlier today on 280 North and Spring Creek Parkway. It's a sign for Providence Family Medicine Eye Care Center, Spring Creek Dental, and South Valley Family Dental.
yeah.
It's a big permanent sign right there. I pull up to that stop sign and I thought, wow, I can't even see the road. And so when I look to the east, I can't even see the road because of that sign. And
Is that signs in compliance in other
Right
ways?
in the Clearview area. I mean, it's got, I think it is, depending on where you measure from, but it's a sign that makes it so I can't see the road coming up here. I've gotta be way out in there to see the road east.
That. What code covers that?
Right here,
This one.
this one right here.
Which number?
C, just right up above.
Well,
What were you thinking, Bob?
well, I was thinking the tree canopies or growth, or we could say, or anything, nothing should block the signs, signals, or streetlights. Or,
Okay,
you know, so that's in the Clearview area of that intersection. And it's,
So you'd like to have us add like C, like Shelley's saying, you'd like to have us add the or other obstruction inside of 5.
additionally, yeah, that works.
You got that
Put
noted?
in.
Scarlett, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
That sign that Bob is talking about that identifies those businesses,
Uh-huh.
they would have had to have gotten a permit for that sign. Or it would have had to have been approved as some part of plans or something. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, because
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes people put those in and they
Yeah.
don't follow the rules, but yeah, I'd have to go back and
Yeah.
look.
Well, and that may be a thing. We may all of a sudden say, this clear sight issue, because I can't see, I want everything is subject to being removed. Where some of those things that are existing may have been items that were approved before. So one other example that some of the subdivisions, the developer required that trees be planted in the park strip. So, you know, people can say, well, I was required to do this. I think my biggest thing is I think we need to study and really understand this, because when that public hearing comes up, people are going to come in, especially on the basis that we are not grandfathering things in. What we're saying is this is the new rule. Everything goes this way. But what we're saying is, instead of everybody chopping down trees and removing signs or things like that, if it's not a safety issue, we're not going to enforce it. So, I mean, people are going to come with a lot of questions, and we're going to need to be able that we really understand what code we're saying, and what are those exceptions, and who's going to determine what's a hazard and what's not, what's that criteria, things of that nature, because there are parts of our town where there are so many trees that are going to, so many places, so many lots that are going to be affected by it, that are safety issues at those intersections. And so I just, whatever we do, I think because we're not grandfathering, and we're just saying everything forward now is this way, which is basically what we're trying to say, but our code, either our code needs to say that, or we need to be able to address that what we are looking at is where it is a safety and life safety issue, that's what we're going to address. And the first question that people will ask is, what is that criteria? And who makes the determination? So I think all the comments everybody has been making has been great. And working through these issues, I myself personally am waiting for that public hearing. I think we will need to hear a lot more from what the people have to say and those kind of things. And I know it's a responsibility of the city to look at these things, make these changes for the safety and well-being of the city. But we've got to make it real clear who's going to be affected and that kind of stuff. So
Mike, where do
anyway,
you
those
want
are
us-
just my thoughts.
you have any suggestions on code changes to make that happen?
Well, what I would like to do is when Scarlett has a chance and she can put in these changes and updates that have all been presented and discussed today and concerns, that if we could have that shot out to us again to review it. And I think that's what it is. We've talked about a lot of different things and this should be in, this should be out. I think we need to see where we're at right now, where these updates have been applied into the code that we have, as everybody's talked about it, and to be prepared.
Okay.
I guess I'm just real concerned. I don't want us to not be able to have answers for people at that public hearing. So
Yes,
that,
but is the public hearing for us to listen or is it for us to answer?
Listen.
well, our responsibility is, and I've been corrected myself many times by many people that I should just not ask questions and just sit there and listen to what they say, and then when they're finished, change whatever we're doing to make them happy. And so we are to listen, but I think we have to, they're going to ask questions. It isn't just saying I like this or I don't like this. They're going to say, so are my trees an issue? My trees have been there forever and there's never been a problem. There's never been an accident. So why are you telling me now that the tree needs to go? And then, oh, by the way, you're telling me I have to pay for it because it's determined that it is a life safety issue, either for pedestrians or from vehicles. So,
In the meeting, you would say those decisions are made when someone looks at on an individual basis. It's not, we're not gonna answer the question right now. I'm not gonna tell you it's a safety issue or not right now.
Yeah, we're
so
not
who
gonna
is
be,
gonna, you,
That will become, when it becomes this identified as a safety issue, then we'll give you a call and we'll talk.
And this is assuming that anyone comes to the meeting.
well, from a few years' experience, I would ask you to prepare yourself because you're gonna have people come to that meeting.
Buckle in.
And so,
Buttercup.
yeah,
You will probably have some people come that think we're not restrictive enough. Because if the people down
Yeah.
in your neighborhood would have had their way, we'd have had like a 50-foot triangle. Cause they
Right.
were very frustrated with the landscaping. So I think we'll hear their comments and then we'll deal with it as we do on an as needed basis out and about, when we go out and about to enforce.
Yeah, I think the hearing is for us to listen to the public and to consider it, not to answer their questions or to say you are in violation or you're not in violation. Is to
well,
listen.
everybody, by reading the code, if I have this 30-inch tree there at the corner, it's pretty obvious that I'm in violation. So I think yeah, and so when we sit there and these individuals and families and people come and say, I have this question, I want to know, this is what I want to know, or what are we going to say? Are we going to say, we're just supposed to listen to you now, so I can't answer that question? The next thing they will ask you is, well, who can answer it?
Scarlett.
Yes, and I just want you to all know, I'll be glad that I'll be gone before Scarlett leaves, but because I don't know what anybody would do. I don't know what I would have ever done if Scarlett and Ryan and wasn't there. So I've been through enough of these when they don't like something, and or they think that we've gone too far, or they think we haven't gone enough. That's all I'm asking.
But
Our-
the other
our-
side of it, Michael, is that many times they come and they're completely misinformed. And we
Yes.
don't need to listen to a lot of what they have to say. We're going to, but we don't need to listen to a lot of what they say because they're addressing something that's out of our control. And so do we tell them there in the meeting, you're wrong? That's not this code that we're working on. We'll be addressing that 3 years from now, or we addressed it 2 years ago. I'm not gonna address it again. So there's all that part of the public hearing that's a waste of time in some respects, because people come uninformed. Whether it's because they didn't read it or because they, like I do, they knee jerk. And they could knee jerk on this one. Okay. I want to back up to 4. Trees shall not be located within the Clearview areas. Okay, no problem. Anybody want to change anything in there? About the ground cover, number 6. Not increase 2 feet above the finished grade items planted should meet the Clearview area height restriction. And we'll let Scarlett determine what 2 feet is based on their property, right?
It's actually based on the finished grade of the street. So you can walk out there to the finished grade of the street and you take your,
2 feet off the street.
and then you do your slide across, and that's what it is.
Okay. And that's what the contractors will be working towards when they're building. Okay, move on to 7.
Can I?
Yeah.
Just 6, I'm just reading it. Ground cover, including landscaping boulders and raised planters, cannot increase the finished grade of the property more than 2 feet above the finished grade of the street. Period.
Items planted in that area.
And items planted in a raised area must meet the Clearview area height restriction when measured from the street level. I'm just wondering about the first sentence, is that,
So if a developer came in and he had the lot graded down so that it met all Clearview provisions for that intersection. And then a homeowner comes in and they want their house on a hill. So they start building the lot up,
right?
then all of a sudden, the lot itself does not meet the Clearview.
Right, but I'm just wondering about that sentence though, the first sentence, because it doesn't say the Clearview area or anything. It just says ground cover, including whatever, cannot be 2 feet above the finished grade of the street, period. So it's kind of unclear, like, we're talking about the Clearview area. Does that make sense?
Oh, if you want,
Well,
you
that's
say in the
under
Clearview
B.
area, comma, ground cover, including,
Yeah,
Something like, that's all I'm saying.
but D is all of 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6 all relate back to D, which says obstruction of vision on corner lots.
yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, I just,
But
But I can add that wording in
it
there.
might not
Make
hurt
it
to
more
put
clear
that,
to
just to
do
make
that.
it clear, yeah.
in the
That's all.
Clearview
Yeah,
area.
I
ground cover.
don't mind adding that in there.
Okay. 7. Number 7, finished grade of the property. Property in the Clearview area must be graded in a manner that preserves the Clearview area. Finished elevation of the property in Clearview area cannot exceed 2 feet in height from the finished grade of the street.
That's kind of the same thing, and you said Clearview area 3 times there.
Yeah. I don't mind doing it in the other one.
I just-
We'll take one of these and move it. to
I'll
the
kind
other
of copy it back and forth there.
So we're all good with the finished grade of the
Yeah.
property. Determining the Clearview area, a drawing showing how to determine the Clearview area can be found in the standard construction drawings included in the standards and specifications manual. And so here is the suggested drawing that would be code. The drawing will be code.
Not this one, but this one,
Finished.
this one is currently what Ryan was pulling up. I added the setback on there because people get so confused when we start talking to them about property line and setback. So I put that little setback on there. That's why it's in red. It's because it's not part of the current illustration. But I had Justin Blaylock, who does graphics and GIS for us. I had him take the same idea and he has made some better graphics that will show, that even the part out in the park strip, which will go back to the developers requiring trees in the park strip. They can require trees in the park strip, but not in the Clearview area part of the park strip.
So where you have, where it's written Clearview area and you have a rectangle, that actually, the whole gray area needs to be extended, then the Clearview area needs to be extended as well.
Correct.
Cause right there, it's only within the 30 feet.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Now, so we're gonna need to review the diagram. We've asked for changes and we need to review the changes. Now, we'd like the same thing, or you're telling us we need, this is not the diagram, so I need to put that.
So the new diagram will be in the next one, yes.
Okay. Clearview area, number E, Clearview area. Site triangles for intersection near curves. It is the intent of the city to provide drivers of vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians, approaching traffic intersections with an unobstructed view of the intersection and sufficient lengths along the intersecting roads to permit them to anticipate and avoid potential conflicts. In some areas of the city, in addition to corner lot and driveway clear view areas, site triangles involving nearby curves may be included. Well, that's a little wordy, but I think it covers it. Anybody got an issue of changes?
No,
It is wordy, but I like it.
Well, if you can simplify it,
No,
Have it
I
done.
think I can comment and try not to offend you.
I'm
I
not
don't think-
offended.
I don't think you get offended very easily.
I will simplify it though, if you tell me how it makes sense, but usually you guys are telling me to put more in, so.
I think it's good.
Residential driveways, this is a whole new section. Residential driveways shall be provided for all residential building lots. However, the lots are part of the, if lots are part of a cluster interblock PUD development, a shared driveway to parking areas may be allowed. The drive approach for the driveway shall be a minimum width of 12 feet, except for driveways required to meet emergency vehicle access, and shall not exceed the maximum width of 35 feet. Secondary drive approach may be permitted in accordance with Providence City standard construction drawings. Okay, so this is residential driveways. This is part of the Clearview. Okay.
No,
No,
this is a different
residential.
section.
Oh,
We finished Clearview.
did we
This
really
is
do that?
outside of Clearview. This is residential.
There's
It's in the same-
9,
it's in the same chapter,
5.
but
But
it's a
it's
different
outside of
section.
Clearview.
5.
Okay, so. No downsloping driveways would be permitted unless otherwise provided by the city due to unusual constraints. Minimum grade at which driveway shall,
Can I just
Yes.
ask a question there? So downsloping driveway means from the sidewalk
To the house.
towards the garage.
So that all that water that comes off the road, if it comes into your property, doesn't go straight into your
Right.
garage. It's not your
So
house.
if you have a downsloping driveway and that comes to a little V and it slopes away from the house and that channels the water away.
It will need to have a slope away from the
Slope
house.
Away from the house and the driveway they meet and channels it away, that's adequate.
That's what we're looking for.
Okay,
Cause you gotta have, if you have it straight into the garage, you're gonna have a problem.
right, no, I know, my
Yeah.
house is like that, but I've got a slope from the garage down. And then it meets the slope from the sidewalk and channels the water away from the house. I haven't had a problem.
and what we're saying in C, the code is saying no down sloping driveway shall be permitted. Unless there's a topographical constraint, an unusual topographical constraint. So would Bob's home be permitted? Would it be allowed or would they try to talk to the contractor? a
I
little bit
think,
to
I
decide?
think the downsloping driveway, in my view, it means that it slopes all the way to the garage and then goes into the garage.
The down, so if because of the topography, a downsloping drive, so what we're gonna do is encourage developers and homeowners and whatnot to have their property so that their driveways don't slope down. But in certain areas, like where Bob lives, and there's a couple of houses up where I live on the west side of 400 East. In certain areas where you have to have a driveway that goes down, we're saying that's okay, but you're going to make provisions for stormwater so that it doesn't flood your house.
Right, so
Okay.
as long as you slope away from the house and the driveway and they meet and channel it away, you're okay. But if you don't slope away from the house, then you've got a problem.
And that's the positive slope. A positive slope is sloping away from the
Away from
house.
the house, right. So I just want to make sure that that's
Okay,
what that
so
means.
do we even need then the first line that says no downward, no down sloping driveways? Do we
Yeah, we
just
do.
need,
Yeah.
if a downslope is allowed to prevent flooding the property, provisions from must be included in the design?
And this is good the way it is. I think, as long as we understand that that's what that means, I think so.
Okay, so we had the retaining wall issue not long ago, up Grandview area, probably a year ago. And they had a non-downsloping property. It was on the downhill side, so they built their property up, so it was a downslope. Now, the next door neighbor decided they were okay with the downsloping. Would we allow this neighbor to build another house just like it on a similar property? Downsloping property, and they would just allow the water to be diverted, the swells or
As
whatever.
long as they put in some kind of a storm water mitigation and their driveway coming out of their actual house for the, however far it has to meet the building code. That 2% down,
2% down, yeah.
as long as they did those two things, just like Bob's house, then we would be okay with that. What we don't want to do is have somebody that has a level piece of property going in, and then because of their design choice, that's why we kind of need this first sentence, because of their design choice, they want to scooch their house down and do some fun things with it and have their driveway go down and do fancy stuff. We don't want to have that happen just because if there's a topographical reason, because you're on a hillside and that's the way you have to do it, that's great. But if you're just gonna make a problem, we don't want to deal with that.
Okay, anybody want to change anything in C?
No.
D, the minimum grade at which a driveway shall be built is 2% slope. Minimum grade,
Mhm.
that is downgrade from the house to the street. Or, yeah,
Away from the house.
Yeah, away from the house.
and no maximum grade.
Maximum,
Oh, yeah.
not to exceed 12%.
What does blue mean?
Well,
Yeah, that's,
Another
we had a
revision?
couple other people. The attorney was helping us, and so when I did her changes, I did them in blue.
Okay. A driveway shall not exceed a slope of 12%.
Yeah,
That's pretty steep, yeah.
Okay,
and that would have solved the problems that we had on that one house if we could have said, no, you can't do a driveway as steep as you did it.
okay, so I don't see any code in here in regards to residential driveways that they need to be paved with anything in particular.
Yeah, it says
Says it in
asphalt
E.
or
Where?
concrete,
E.
somewhere up above,
Echo.
or somewhere,
Right there.
E, right
First
below
sentence.
Let's do it.
or right below it.
Residential driveways shall be constructed with asphalt or
There it
concrete.
is. It was half a sentence away from it.
Through the area of the city right away.
Should it be through there, he said, or to the pavement, to the street, to the paved street?
That would be, that's the city.
That's what this,
that's the city, right?
through the
Yeah.
city right away.
Just once you get on your own property.
Sidewalk,
Choose to do something different.
But you can't, it's not here, but you can't put something in that's gonna be a muddy mess, because then you get in trouble with some of our other codes.
yeah.
So, but if you put in a hard surface driveway, if you put in some kind of pavers or something that was on your own property, and if you could travel on it, and it wouldn't create a muddy mess as it wears down, that would be fine.
And you can't track the muddy mess onto the road.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
And it
Okay.
has to, this has to hold the capacity of 75,000 pounds.
if it's an emergency, if it's a driveway that's gotta be built to fire station standards, then it's gotta be 20 feet wide and it's gotta have the 75,000 pounds.
Okay. So residential driveways through the area in the city right of way need to be constructed with asphalt or concrete.
Yep, we don't wanna mess with pavers and fancy
Okay.
stones and stuff.
But does that say that the construction through the, so are we requiring driveways required to meet? Sorry. Are we there's nothing in here that says what the driveway on their property should look like or be constructed of?
That would be elsewhere defined. That's not in this code.
Where generally would it be defined?
Building code.
Okay,
Because
Is
it
there-
has to maintain its slope away, it has to, there are other things that would.
and a hard surface so that it can handle more than 2,000 pounds or whatever. Okay, one, driveways required to meet emergency. Okay, great. Any problems with E or 1? Number 2, approaches shall be constructed in accordance with Public Works standards. Okay. And we're gonna go to lot area, other buildings. This is the end
That's the end of this
of
code.
this one.
Right.
No portion of the lot area, well,
It's all new, it's all
require connection names.
existing code.
Yeah, I had questions on this one. 9.6. Building. use plan. No portion of a lot area, open space. No portion of a lot area, open space, off-street parking, or yard required about or in connection with any building or the use for the purpose of complying with this title may be included as part of the lot area. Open space, off-street parking, except as permitted. What does that mean? That's what I had, 10.9.6. What does 10.9.6 mean?
It means. Then we get into more of this trouble when it's in a commercial area than we do on a. Residential area. But if for some reason. You have your principal structure and you've got your setbacks and everything. And you're using that building. Another building on another lot. Has to respect your setbacks. They can't. Nothing in, for the purpose of complying with this title. In a similarly required or any other building use, somebody else can't just come in and decide, I'm gonna put my off-street parking in this setback. They have to respect the setbacks of both properties. Unless we allow them to do a shared use driveway or something like that. They can't just decide that they're gonna violate another property's setbacks.
Okay,
Glad you understand this.
Well, that's kind of,
is it the-
that's one of the things that Justin and I are trying to work out on a graphic, and we haven't totally got it, is there's a minimum setback. That doesn't necessarily mean that your whole yard is included in the minimum setback. However, some homes are built from setback to setback to setback, so then their whole yards are included in the setback. Other homes are built so that they've got a minimum 15-foot setback, and then they've got 20 or 30 or 50 feet of yard between the setback and their property line, so they've got like a 75-foot backyard. Well, so they've got a lot of property that we really don't put a lot of rules on, but people get confused and think they go from the back of the house they get confused, particularly when we're talking about retaining walls, what they can and can't do. They think we're telling them they can't do anything on their yard, and what we're mostly telling them is you can't do anything in this setback. Or what you can do in a setback is limited, and that's pretty much what we're saying here is what you can do in setbacks is limited, and one person can't impact negatively the other person's setback.
Okay. We'll move on to 10.9.7. If we gotta renumber here. See chapter 10.12, accessory buildings. 10.12 is ADUs. The IADUs and the ADU code. But we're gonna see that next time, probably. Okay, so we have a more code to review there. Okay, those are our suggestions for 10.9.
Each of these is a separate study issue that we should vote on for what to do next, right? Is this a vote thing or is this?
If you're ready to go to public hearing, it's a vote to move to a public hearing. Otherwise, it will stay as a study item to the next meeting.
Okay, so we need to receive this back again in a close to finalized document.
If that's what you'd like, yes.
Well, if we want to move forward with this and accepting this, we can't do it tonight because you're getting a lot of changes.
Well, she's got the changes noted,
Yeah.
right? And she'll make it,
You've actually narrowed it down. You've only got 4 changes out of
Okay.
all your discussion.
One of them being the diagram.
Mhm.
Right.
I think the diagram is really, really important.
Yeah.
So,
And then you obviously probably won't be perfect at that point, but at least the question comes, is it good enough for, if those changes are made, is it good enough to take it to a public hearing? Listen to the public feedback, and then at that point, once you've heard the feedback, then finalize both with what you've heard. Because sometimes what we see is you move in one direction and find out that the feedback is in left field of where you were at, and you say, oh, well, if we'd known that feedback, we would have been working towards some middle ground rather than all off to this direction, and then find out you're in right field and public feedback was in left field, and if you had stayed in center field, you both would have been in the right direction. So sometimes having that public feedback earlier isn't a problem. Granted, to Michael's point, you want to be prepared when you get that feedback that you know they may or may not understand what's happening, and so you still want to be prepared. You don't want to take it so you don't know what's there and haven't done your homework, because that public can eat you alive. Probably not a good term, but the public can understand when you're not prepared, and they don't appreciate that. And so that you want to make sure you're prepared, and if you have your questions, then you move that way. That's up to you, if you think it's ready, otherwise we'll bring it back. So
And if you bring it back, we delay the public hearing.
certainly,
yeah.
Right.
so is there a sentiment to see code, one more draft of the code before we address it? Bob says there's no, on his part, there's no.
I think we've addressed things and we're probably ready for a public hearing, and then we can make alterations after that.
Okay, so our next review,
Personally, I mean,
I'm asking,
We accept
because
the
I'm
motion.
the opposite opinion, so I'm
I,
listening.
my view.
We accept the motion.
We don't have. to
No,
vote
I'm
on
not
this.
accepting anything right now.
We'll just-
I'm asking questions of the
I
commission.
agree. I think we workshopped it really well tonight, and I think we go to public hearing and we can workshop it again.
Okay, so as long as we can workshop it again, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted, was to workshop it again.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to see
I'd like
something
to-
more final to
I'd like
workshop.
to workshop it after we hear from the public. I think that we're, at the end of the day, no matter how long we spend prior to the hearing, we're gonna have to make alterations after the hearing.
But we can have the diagram to present to the public and the changes we requested tonight, right?
Oh, yeah, we can start and present that for about an hour. Take all the questions.
Get your laser pointer out.
I will say that at some point in time, or every now and again, you don't workshop it after the public hearing, because you get
Because
good
we're all
feedback on
in
the public
tune.
hearing, and
Oh, you think we're that
We'll
good?
see what happens.
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
you don't have to. You certainly have the option, but you don't have to.
Being a good listener doesn't mean you always agree. But you listen.
That's true.
okay, we're gonna go, so I'll accept a motion. What kind of a motion?
I would just get a motion that with the changes that we've made today, that we move forward and present that at a public hearing on February 28th or whatever.
Second,
Okay, we've got a motion.
Oh, we don't have to vote. It's just a study item.
we
I
voted,
would move it to a public hearing. That's the next step of the process.
Oh, okay.
We've got a motion to move it to public hearing.
second,
We've got a second, we've got a motion by Mr. Hanky, we've got a second by Bob Washburn. All in favor of moving it to public hearing?
aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Next item looks short, if I'm on the right page here, fiber system code introduction.
So the,
I have a hard time applying
This-
that title to, we've got 3 pages here, and I can't see that this one in front of me, what it applies to. Does it apply to 10.3?
no, it applies to 11.4.8.
11-4,
Okay. So I've got
which
the
doesn't
wrong-
exist today.
Right,
Correct, this is all new.
This is all new and
and
pretend
this
that it's all
actually,
red.
so, yeah, technically it should all be red, but.
Okay,
And, really quickly, just a couple of things. When Bob came into my office a little bit earlier, on A1D, there is a spelling error. It says public property, it should say or in the public right of way. And then I actually kind of left a word out on 3 in that same section A, conduit installed by developer on behalf of the city. So I don't know why I put or, but it should said conduit installed by developer on behalf of the city. So as you're going through, keep those 2 changes in mind. And what this is doing, to set the stage for this, we are creating a utility. Well, we created the utility, but we didn't put, how we were going to administer the utility into code yet. So there's actually a whole nother part that the city council's working on that's not land use. It's the creation of the enterprise fund and the utility itself that they're working on. But we want to be able to tell the developers when they come to town that we're just like Rocky Mountain or Comcast or Dominion. We want them to put in some infrastructure for us because we're a public utility. Just like we have them put in water pipes and sewer lines, we want them to put in conduit for fiber.
just like you have a contractor do the infrastructure
Mhm,
on all the other utilities,
right,
especially the ones that the city owns, like the same thing done.
right.
Okay,
And so that has to be introduced in the subdivision code, so that when a developer comes in and looks at our subdivision code, he will see, oh, okay, so not only do I have to put conduit in for gas lines and electrical lines, I gotta put conduit in for fiber. If it wasn't introduced here, it would make it a little bit more difficult for us to make the developers aware, because then they'd have to search through other places of the code that they wouldn't think to look at. So we wanna put it in the subdivision code where it's very clear and they know what's coming down the pipe for them.
So the city stubs it to the property line and then the developer needs to do it to the house, basically.
No,
No?
not in a new development. What it means is that when they're building the road and they put in the water line and the
Right.
gas line and power, they're gonna put in a conduit for fiber. And that fiber will go up to the house.
So the developer and then the builder has to do it to the house, right?
Mhm.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
you're right.
Right,
because the developer probably doesn't know exactly where the house is gonna be.
right, know that.
Right. And then the city puts the fiber optics in the conduit when the time comes for the homeowner to get
Right.
service.
okay, and so can you tell us, Scarlett, what happens if they do a bad job? And 3 years later, somebody moves into a home and the line is crimped someplace? Whose responsibility is that?
Well, unfortunately, if they've done a bad job and in the inspections, it was a good job, but whatever they did was shoddy work that didn't last longer than a year after our final inspection, It's on the city.
Okay,
If
well,
it's
it's on
within,
the city,
Mhm.
not on the public, it's not on the owner of the home.
After the warranty period.
Yeah.
After, so during the warranty period, we've got contractor,
Now, if
is
the,
doing warranty.
if the homeowner, that's why they don't put the conduit into the home, but it's just like Rocky Mountain or anybody else. If the homeowner's gonna do something and they call for blue staking and we blue stake that our fiber line is sitting there and the homeowner goofs up and damages it, then that's the
Right.
homeowner's responsibility. But if it's shoddy workmanship on the developer and it doesn't appear until after the warranty period for the development, then that's on the city part.
Even though it's on private land, it was inspected and
No,
they followed
that's
all the
different.
agreements.
The private land part comes as part of the building code, as part of the building, the site plan. This is the part of the installation that's in the public right of way. And
Okay,
then when
Okay.
when the home gets built, that's when that contractor is gonna take it into the home. So if that contractor does a bad job, that's between the homeowner and the
Yeah.
contractor and whatever they work out. But as far as the developer putting it in the public right of way for us, or else inside the property line, depending on whatever utility feature we're doing. That, after that happens, if there's a failure, after more than a year after the final inspection goes by and there's a failure, then that would be on the city.
okay. Shelley, do you see anything in here you'd like to discuss?
I'd like to make a motion, a motion. I'd like to make a motion to move on to the next agenda item. Or to put this to, does this have to go to public hearing?
Mhm.
Okay, to put this to public hearing, I think it looks great.
Okay, hang on to that thought. Mr. Hanky,
Yeah.
any changes, concerns?
My
Yeah.
concerns, we've already addressed.
Okay, so we've got a motion to send this, ordinance proposal to, through public hearing and a final study after that. What is it called? It's not the final, it's not a final study.
It would be a recommendation after that.
To make a recommendation, and then we have a chance to make changes during that
So
process.
this is just to move to public hearing. right?
Okay, we have a second.
We've got a motion?
Yes, Shelley made a
Second.
motion.
I'll second.
Very quick motion. She's obviously got some ice cream in the fridge at home. Okay, all in favor of moving this, moving 1148 to public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That one passes. Retaining walls. You wanna tell us what's going on here, why we got changes? Is it state or is it
No.
our city needs?
It's city needs. Prior to, I think it's 2021. We didn't have anything in our city code that dealt with retaining walls. Even though we've been building on hillsides, the people the way the houses and everything were built, they hadn't really looked at large masses of concrete and boulders and things like that as architectural features that they wanted to bring in. They did it differently. So we've had some retaining walls, but not an overabundance. And then in, probably through the COVID period, maybe even a little bit in 2019, we started to see people that were coming in and they were changing the other thing that we didn't see a lot of was people changing the elevation of their lots. They had bought a lot and they designed a house to fit on the lot. What we see now is people buy a lot and then change the lot to fit the design of their house, which generally necessitates retaining walls and different architectural features and stuff that we hadn't had to deal with before. And we had, it came to light Well, the first one that really came to light was actually on the southeast side of the city, when a landscape architect wanted to put a great big landscaping feature, and I mean great big. It was a 6 foot tall, I think it was 6 or 8 feet square. And they wanted that to be a great raised garden, and they wanted it 5 feet off the sidewalk. So that was gonna take up a significant chunk of the front yard. And we said, well, that's a structure and that won't work. And so, so we worked with that particular, landscaper, and we realized we were right in telling him it was a structure and it had to meet the front yard setbacks. But we felt like then we dealt with that one. Then we started seeing over on the northeast side of the area, people changing the elevations of their lots and stuff. And what they were doing was building them up and putting great big retaining walls in. And neighbors were getting frustrated and because they bought a lot with a view, and then the next thing they know, somebody's built a lot up and put a big retaining wall. And so then we started getting people calling us, and we didn't have anything that would prevent that. And so for a while, we thought, well, do we need to have something that prevents it? And then we decided, yeah, I guess we better. And so then we put the little A that is all black in this, where it says current code at the top of page 1 of 5. So we put the black part in our zoning code. So that's all we had, was just those 3 rules. However, we have had, unfortunately, we have had contractors that have taken advantage of those 3 rules, and they've looked at loopholes and things. And while they may be living to the letter of the law, they're certainly not living to the spirit. So we realized that we had to change the letter to make it more clear as to what we were really trying to achieve. When we said that less than 3 feet high retaining walls are exempt from the setback, we've tried to help people in hilly area, in sloping areas by saying, well, that's fine. If you build a 3 foot wall, and then you can terrace and build another 3 foot wall within your 20 yard front or your 20 foot front yard setback. Now, we're not saying the whole yard, unless they happen to be having their house sit right on the 20 yard or the 20 foot front yard setback. We're just saying in that setback. Well, that what we had then, instead of people in our vision tiering, was gonna be, here's a wall, here's a level place, here's another wall, here's a level place. What we got was, here's a wall, here's an offset, here's another offset. And so we were basically getting vertical. So they were meeting the letter. Technically, they were tiering, but they certainly weren't meeting what we anticipated. And so then we had people, neighbors, that were frustrated with that. And so we realized about a year ago, we went through quite an exercise. We had a homeowner that wanted to change what we have here to allow them to build right up to the setback, or not right up to the setback, right up to the property line, because they needed to extend their driveway because they wanted a side entry and they needed to extend their driveway. Unfortunately, by the time they would have done all that and then put some type of a guardrail or something on top of the driveway so that they didn't have somebody pull right off into the neighbor's yard, the neighbor was a little frustrated. And so we went through several things, and the one thing we learned from that particular city council was we didn't want to put the neighbor in the position of somebody coming to them and saying, I've got this really cool wall that I want to build and it's going to look real nice, and do you have any problem with it? And they want to be a good neighbor, and this person's moving in and they want to be welcoming and everything. And so they say, well, yeah, we can probably work with that. And then it's something way different than what they had thought, which is kind of what happened there. And I don't really think that anyone was trying to be dishonest at all. I think what happened was, as the house was being built, they made some changes, which then made changes to the size of that retaining wall, which then made some big changes in what the neighbor would look at. And so then we had some other walls, as I said, that completely ignored the tiering idea and was more of a step. And they were staying under 4 feet, so they didn't need engineering. And so now we've got massive amounts of earth being held with retainage that wasn't engineered. And so but they weren't doing anything against code. I want to make that really clear. These people have not been malicious. They've been following the code. It's just that our idea of the code and their idea of the code was a little different. And the way the state looks at it is, city, you're responsible to write the code. So you write what you want. And if you don't make it clear and somebody can misinterpret it, and it's pretty easy to say that they could misinterpret it, then we're gonna go with them, because you had the chance to, or the courts, I shouldn't say the state, the courts, because the courts look at it and say, put in there what you want, but once you put it in there, then we live with what we get. So we've come back and added a lot. I will say we have added a lot. In fairness, the only part that you're really, this is kind of like the, fiber code. Only I wanted you to see everything that we're adding into a different part of the book, the code book. The part that is going into the zoning part of the code is just this new graphic on page 1 and that red line on D that says see chapter 5.4 fence regulations. In this instance and in the fiber instance, you're gonna hold a public hearing to hear about this, and people will also have other questions on that other part, and that's fine. You can talk to them about the part in 5.4.12. But the city council is also going to have to hold a public hearing on 5.4.12 because it's a different part of the code book. It's the fence regulation code book. And retaining walls and fences get intermingled so much that that's where we're putting the actual, here's how you, so A is here's what you need in the zoning setbacks, and 5.4.12 is here's what we let you build the wall. And so but where all of this is so new, and you really need to see 5.4.12 for A to make sense to you, for 7 retaining walls to make sense. So that's why the whole thing is sitting in front of you.
So just to clarify, in my mind, the 5.4.12 is not a land use thing,
Right.
and it's not a planning commission
It's for
recommendation,
context.
pardon me?
It's for context for you to understand the context of what your piece of the puzzle is.
So all of this stuff in pages 2 through 5, we can't make recommendations to? Is that what you're saying?
There's proposed code there, 132.
You do not have to make a recommendation, but you could certainly look at it and say, well, from what you have in 7, I don't think you've made it clear in,
Yeah,
on page 3 of 5. I don't think you made it clear in C
okay.
that
That
people are gonna
there's a
understand.
disconnect between
Yeah.
these.
So you could say something like that, but you're not required to make a recommendation to city council on this. You can make a recommendation to me as staff and say, Scarlett, I think you could clear that up better and the city council will understand this better. But you're not required to make a recommendation to city council on it.
So we're talking today about, we're in this work meeting today to talk about 10.8.3. It's very strongly affected by 5.4.12.
And if there's something in 5.4.12 that you see that you think needs to be added in 10.8.3, then this would be the time to say, I think you need to add some wording in 10.8.3 that reference them back to 5.4.12 or whatnot. And then
So,
that's why you're getting all of this is in context, so you can see how the two relate to each other.
so we're looking at definitions from 132, new definitions, proposed definitions from 132. What does 132 cover?
It has all of our definitions.
Okay. that's
Instead
all
of
it
each,
is.
instead of each title having its own definitions, like we used to have, we've moved all of the definitions into one location. So, which isn't part of the land use code. So,
Okay, so the changes that we're looking at are on page
one.
1 of 5,
Mhm.
period, and that's only part of one.
2/3 of it, yeah.
Okay,
But, and that's what we will hold a hearing on, is just that piece. But I believe it's our responsibility to make comments on some of this other stuff personally.
well, agreed. I'm concerned that we're getting pulled into a public hearing that addresses 5412 in a roundabout way, and we need to be careful about that. So
Well,
when we
when
go to public, we don't have to address anything on 5412.
you go to public hearing, 5412 won't be there because the planning commission, the city council will hold a public hearing on that.
Okay, so we
But
don't
for
see
you to
that.
be able to make a decent recommendation on 1083, you need to see the new proposed stuff that's going into 5412.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that when we talked earlier today. But, yeah, that makes sense now.
okay, so the graphic is the big new piece. And then, letter 7 or 7D is the other piece, just referring to 54. Okay, so I believe we need to start by looking at the diagram and discussing the diagram and why there's an X on the third item down and the other three are green. On the first, part of the graphic, the house on the left has installed a retaining wall, is that correct?
Mm-hmm,
And they've kept it away from the setback,
mm-hmm,
not underneath it, they've kept it off of the setback
mm-hmm.
completely.
The footing is up against the setback.
Right. Right,
So no part of that retaining wall is in the setback.
okay. So does this say that the house, or the owners of the house on the right can fill in all the way up to that retaining wall? Or is
No.
this saying that, what's this saying?
The owners on the house to the right can only fill into their property line.
Right.
But these people can fill in to their property line, but their retaining wall is out of the setback.
Okay, I see.
But the retaining wall is actually retaining the dirt, so they're probably not gonna fill anything. They're just gonna put the retaining wall in there and maybe put some gravel for drainage and. Because they're holding this dirt back that's on that straight line. Right? The elevation change is dropping down, they're putting a retaining wall to hold back their neighbor's yard.
Right. Okay, so on the second one, it's okay too as well to take the retaining wall, the owner of the property on the left, to take the retaining wall right up to the edge of his property line.
Not the wall,
I'm sorry, the footing,
the footing.
Footing.
the footing on the wall, right up to the property line. And in that case, same thing. They want to backfill it, they can backfill it. Their neighbor can backfill all the way up to the property line, but not be on the property line. Am I reading enough into this or too much or?
No,
So,
but the height of that, on the second one, the height of that retaining wall comes into play because it's in the setback. In the first one, we're not worried about height so much because it's out of the setback. So it can be, it still may have to have a building permit depending on how high they're gonna do it. But as far as the retaining wall, having to meet any kind of setback things, we're not at the height, we're not worried about that. But in the second illustration, and the third illustration, we do worry about height.
I think we should label that somehow in the graphic.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, right, I agree.
Okay, so on the first one, the owner on the left can take that wall up 6 feet, get a permit and install it right where it is.
Then take it up 8 feet.
No, I think 6 is as big as a retaining wall can be, right? Isn't that what it says there?
Without
D?
the, if it goes over 6 feet, then it is gonna trigger,
We could see greater than 6 feet in height.
Okay.
it's going to trigger some extra stuff. Yeah. Right?
right, but even in the second one, the exposed side of the wall is facing the property owner that's putting the wall in.
Good.
And so
Right.
that's why.
That's why they can do that.
Mhm.
There's a lot in the
Another-
graphic.
Sorry.
A lot in.
And that's why
Yeah,
the bottom one, or not the bottom one, the one with the X. That wall is put in and it's retaining the house on the right's property, but it's the house on the left that has to look at that
Right.
that wall. And so
Without their
that's why,
choosing.
right, so that's why that one's Xed.
But if you leave enough land in between where it can be landscaped
If
or
you go
something.
outside the setback, then you can do it.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And so that's why on the bottom one, that retaining wall is outside the setback. It's
Right.
holding the dirt on the right. And the property owner on the left, even if they don't like looking at that particular wall, it's still outside of the setback, and so it's fine.
And it can be taller than 6 feet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A certain.
Mhm.
I'd just like to add another recommendation for the graphic, either some hash marks or some shading.
Okay.
Just so you can see exposed side versus a little more clearly.
Yeah, an explanation of why this is good or bad and who's doing what, who's the owner of the wall. I mean,
Okay,
you should be able to determine that by looking at it, but
okay,
but we've got the house on the left is, in the first two is building the wall, and house on the right is building it on the right two. I would like to also add a couple of additional graphics possible.
You got them already written up in your pocket?
Did you
Yeah.
draw that?
Cool.
Well, I mean,
You
I,
just fax them over to her or?
no, I just,
Okay,
right in here,
okay.
in this golden head of mine.
You're
So-
over there drawing us some Picasso?
So if we look at the one that's got a red X, okay? I would like to propose that if there is no home here on the left, and that's agricultural property, cows don't mind looking at the retaining wall. And that should be okay to build up against, have the footing up against the property line. And have the retaining wall close to the property line.
What about when they do build a house on it? It's agricultural now, but what about when they do come and build a
Okay,
house on
right,
it?
that's a great point. That's a really good point,
I mean,
because
cause now you've affected my property, although I
No.
haven't built there yet, but maybe you've affected me.
I haven't affected you because the wall is already there and you don't have to buy that lot.
Yeah, but I already own it.
No, you don't.
I'm the
farmer
agriculture,
does.
I'm the farmer,
No.
I already own it. And I want
He-
my child to build there, and you've affected me now. Cause I own the
Keep
property.
going, Bob,
No,
keep going,
No,
Bob.
I disagree. I think that if we're working up against an agricultural, you know, that's
I
my
think-
opinion, that
Okay.
we should be
I
able to
think-
do that.
Okay, and Bob, I think that as a planning commission, we should consider future. Today, I think that's great.
Right.
But we ought to consider 10 years from now when that's being developed. Because it does take some of the value out of the property, the ag property. And I don't appreciate when people take value on my property.
I mean, if you own the agricultural property and you do it on yours, then you knew, and the only effect that Brian's talking about is yours. But when you're, just because they haven't built there yet, is that the effect you want? I mean, that's the question, right?
So what the situation I have in mind is the people who own that agricultural property will not sell as long as they're alive. That's been their song for ever.
But to that point,
So,
every piece of property in Providence has outlasted their residents.
yes, that's true.
At least
And it
one.
will.
Talking
And
like a
maybe
prophet.
when their kids get their hands on the property, then it'll be sold and developed.
Well, the property
I mean-
you're thinking about is going into trust right now because the woman that owned the property passed away a couple months ago.
No.
Oh,
Different person,
20
different, not Renderneck.
oh, okay, never mind. then. Well, I know there's that one right there. There's a couple homeowners that
There's
are
another.
using the
But
same.
life can change overnight.
Right, it
That's
can,
found, life
So,
can change
so
overnight.
I would like to recommend that. As a, I mean, you guys can talk and
Right,
give me your
we can.
opinion, but
I personally disagree with that. I like how it's written right there.
I do want more graphic, but I would agree with this one, the current.
oh,
graphic.
no, the current graphic, yes, if there's a house there, then yeah.
Oh, you're talking about a fifth graphic with no
I'm
house.
adding another line to the graphic.
Okay, I suggest you draw a fifth one with no house on the left,
And agriculture, draw a cow in there.
okay? But still put a big X if it's like the other one.
Oh, you want an
I don't
X
think
on
you
that
change
too?
it. Yeah, I don't think you change it, whether it has a house or not. Personally.
Okay, thanks.
And Shelley,
Appreciate
your feelings?
I mean, I have property in my backyard. So I mean, I hear you, I hear both sides. But I think that potentially there could be a house there someday. And so we have to kind of always plan for the future. I'm with these guys.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, I wanted to bring it up, cause I feel like that would be totally reasonable. Anyway.
I'll suggest that we leave the
No.
4 graphics that are there with the.
No, there's one more.
Okay.
One more.
Oh,
One more change.
another proposal with
Another
your.
proposal, yeah.
Golden
So-
Globe.
So. My neighbor in my backyard, and I get together and say, he says, I need to retain a bunch of that dirt behind your house. And I said, well, I want to just kind of put some more dirt up on mine. And what if we get together and we build a retaining wall together, and we put it right on the property line. And we have the footing going out, wall goes right up on the property line. You can fill it up as high as you want, I'll fill it up as high as I want, and we're all good to go. We both want to have a wall. There's no sense in building 2 walls with an air gap in between, right?
So you want a
I
diagram,
want a diagram like
if the wall is built on the property line
the wall is built on the property line with the
And
footing on
owned-
both.
and owned by
both
both properties.
Right,
And you want a green check mark on.
absolutely,
That's like building a fence where both neighbors
yeah,
choose to help pay for it.
yeah. That's an awesome idea.
What are your thoughts on that, Scarlett?
Well, we've actually worked with people on that. And so if we want to go that direction, then we probably need to add something in here because we required, the people that have done it, we didn't just require a handshake. We required easements for the footings and so that the future people that bought their house didn't come back to the city and say, why did you let them build this wall here? Their footings are on my property and whatnot. And so, there had to be financial, each person had to have financial, obligation to the wall. And they had to do the proper easements and stuff so that in the future, somebody couldn't come back and say that we had or if somebody changed their mind, we had someone tell a fence owner they could put a fence 2 inches on their own on their property. And then in the course of the time that the fence was built, they got mad at the fence owner and wanted us to make them move the fence. And
And it was all handshake.
I said, that's between you two. You told us you were fine with it. You worked that out. And so with the walls, we tried to be as clear as possible that each property owner, because we don't want to have a situation. That was one thing that the previous council was very clear about. They didn't want a situation where a property owner felt coerced or tricked or anything else because they agreed to a wall on the property line and then it wasn't what they thought they were agreeing to. So if they're actually paying for part of it and they're involved in the design and they're involved in the easements and stuff, we can write that in if that's something you feel like should be allowed.
But we don't want you to go and intimidate your neighbor,
Oh, come on.
Right.
cause you're big,
Just a big boy.
tough, and, you know, we don't want you to go and intimidate your neighbor and they say, oh, okay, well, we'll sign it, but we're not paying anything.
Well, that is interesting, because sometimes neighbors will build a fence, but only one neighbor pays for it. So that could happen with a retaining wall, if the guy's got enough money or whatever and says, and they both agree, yeah,
They both
that's
agree.
great. So there had to be somehow to protect the neighbors, I guess. I
At this
agree.
point, we haven't let them do that if they've been honest with us. At this point, we've done it, I think, 3 different times. And all 3 times that we've done it, in one case, there's 3 neighbors involved. In the other case, there were just 2. But the 3rd case, there were just 2. All 3 have come in and said, we want to participate jointly in this wall, and they did the easements and the whole 9 yards. So it didn't appear there was any coercion, and nobody's called and screamed at me afterwards that they thought they were coerced. But that's kind of why we say everybody has to be involved in it financially as well, so that there's no,
The other alternative is if he's got all the money, he can buy into it, so he changes the setback and he can build it right where he wanted it anyway. Cause if he's got all the money to. and-
Buy the land from his neighbors, what you're saying?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, then it doesn't, I mean, if he wants to achieve that,
You'd
then
have to-
fine, and then there's ways to achieve things if
And they could,
if it's all that way.
yeah,
But if they're both invested in it, then we're not gonna get a problem.
so basically what you're saying, to do what Bob's saying is you would state that, the person would have to, if you show another graph like that, the person would have to buy the property, the setback from the neighbor.
No, I'm
That way.
saying that if there's no financial interest in one party,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
then that's, okay,
That's
yeah.
what I'm saying. So either both can go into it financially or, but do we say how much? I mean, does that have to be 50-50 or can the guy pay $1? As long as he pays something which says, I agree to it.
I agree
guess.
to it.
Financially invested into it, I don't know that we're gonna draw a straw.
It's really
Right.
the easement here that like,
Mhm.
for families down the road, you know, Bob and I. Yeah, Bob and I wanna go in on it together, but then my daughter and his grandson, they don't like each other, one of them wants to get rid of the wall. That easement and that contract has to be in place.
That's enforceable.
So Bob, you brought in fences into the retaining wall.
What? No?
I think that's exactly what you.
Not yet.
Don't do that, don't do that. This is a retaining wall.
Well, it's in the fence, it's in the fencing,
It is, they have to deal with this in fences all the time, right? And then you got homes that are twin homes that they gotta share a common wall, and isn't there an agreement that they file in the court, or file with the recorder that we agree that the
Separate walls.
common wall between us and.
Usually separate walls, aren't they?
Usually, if it's a twin home, there's separate walls with a 0 lot line.
so
So
it
they're
looks like
actually-
one
So
wall.
it looks like a wall, but there are separate walls. Generally in a twin home, that's the case.
The roof might be one piece, but the walls are generally separate.
Yeah, usually there is it's a 0 lot line, so you can actually
Right.
thaw it down and it
And you'd be
both,
okay.
So
both
they
be
can
there.
just put 2 retaining walls right next to each other.
Oh,
Yeah, let's not do that.
Well, then you got the structure underneath, and that's clearly.
That's why we'd
identified.
rather that they work together if they're both gonna do that.
Yeah.
But, and in one situation, the height was to the advantage of the neighbor on the left in the backyard. And it was the advantage to the neighbor on the south in the front yard. So they worked together on that wall. They came in together, they did the easements and everything. So that they built that uniform wall, but really the neighbor on the left did the back part, the neighbor on the right did the front part, but it was all one. I mean, it wasn't like split down horizontally, really. It was more vertical the way they, or I mean, it was linear the way they did it, so.
Does that have to be specified in code? Like this small
No.
niche?
No, but it's gotta be
A
recorded
legal agreement,
with the county recorder so that the next owner understands what they're buying.
Yeah,
Right.
so that when your daughter and his grandson decide that they don't want that part of the wall on their thing, they have to honor what the two of you decided, because you had it recorded as an easement that says it gets to stay here. Now, they can't make it bigger or do other goofy things with it, but they have to honor that easement. They can repair it, but they can't go wacky unless they give both permission.
Well, it's against a lot of go wacky. Anything else, Bob?
So are we saying they had one more?
on the
thing there?
graphics, no.
Well, to add, if we were to talk about our code, the common wall slash fence, concrete fence, whatever you want to call it, retaining wall. We're not trying to codify that. We're saying that they should go, create an easement between the two of them and agree on the
Right.
record.
Right.
So
Does
that
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 need to
one's,
be in here or not?
no, I
Well,
don't think so.
well, it would be, you know, a graphic, it'd be one of these options. That if you could do this and then an asterisk and requires easements granted to both, whatever the requirements are. But I mean, it
Council
makes it
on that one,
obviously
right?
an option.
Does it need to go to code? Or can it just stay outside
Just
of
keep
code?
doing it the way you've been doing.
I'm good either way. Honestly, I am good either way. What do you think, Brian?
Let's make it an option, send it to the city council, let them think about it, or it's gonna go to a hearing too anyway, right?
Oh, yeah. We love public hearing.
So, and let's make two new graphics. We do the one with this shared wall. And then one with the agricultural and put an X in there. Because that was brought to my attention, someone that, wants to do that. And I said, I think that's a great idea, and so I'm bringing it up.
Is it your neighbor?
Pardon me?
Is it really your neighbor? Who wants
Well-
this? What, did you want to do this? one?
Not,
The immediate
No,
neighbor, what's the
the
name?
agricultural-
Let's put this on the record.
I was talking about the example you just
I've
gave us
figured out
about,
where he's
you wanna
talking
work with your
about.
neighbor and put a common wall.
And it's gonna
no,
be the
no,
same
no,
thing
that's just,
when the kids
that's
get
just
it.
something that I
Okay.
thought of as I was reading through this.
Okay.
But, backing up against an agricultural area seems to me like, let them use their whole property.
I agree with A, but not with B. I agree with sharing the wall in the center and with
Okay, good.
contract, but I disagree with. the-
So if we put a graphic in there, it says agricultural and a wall with the footing right against the property line with an X in it. With the red X says you can't do that. That makes it clear that,
Oh, yeah.
so that's what I'm
So you're
saying.
gonna ask,
Oh, put a red X.
that our
Put a
final
red X in
meeting
there and
is.
say, you know,
So the,
if you wanna do that, you can.
so you're suggesting that we put it into code, another graphic to cover this agricultural,
Right.
and that we
And
decide
then we discussed it and.
red X
well,
or green
But-
check mark.
And then that goes to the city council and they say, why'd you put a red X there? I like it. Let's do it. I don't know.
Or why'd you put a cat there?
Well, it's because somebody wants it to be an option.
Yeah,
You know, if the legislature passes the bills they've got, they're going to make it so you can't define any zoning greater than 5,400 square feet, so it won't matter anyway. There won't be any agricultural. There won't be any agricultural zoning left, so it won't matter.
Ryan is not being facetious. They really are looking at, depending if a builder or a contractor, developer, if they will agree to build new homes that qualify for the governor's first-time home buyer thing. That's the way it's starting out right now. I think it's gonna get expanded, but right now,
I don't think it'll end there.
yeah, right now, if I'm a developer and I come into Providence City and, well, not right now, if this proposed legislation goes through and I'm a developer and I come into Providence City and I say, I'm going to build homes that qualify for the governor's first-time home buyer
Initiative.
initiative. They're gonna be single-family homes. We will have to let them do that in any residential zone, and they can do it at 8 units per acre.
Which
Which-
means, Shelley, how large a lot do you have?
10,000 square feet.
All right, so at that point, you got 2 houses on it, right? So you can fit another house on there and 2 external ADUs and 2 internal ADUs. So you got
But you
got
can't
room
park in
for
the street.
six families on your lot and four kids for people per unit. So I just making sure you're prepared to fit them all. That extra house and the
You're
extra
gonna have to go up.
extra ADUs.
Well, that's the issue.
I don't know if 8 will actually come in, but I really do think that the legislature will push for some type of if they're willing
Preferential treatment
for.
if they're gonna build first-time houses.
Because the governor wants that first-time money to go to brand-new construction. So it's not so much, I mean, it's a first-time home buyer and they've got to qualify for that. And the house has to meet those, whatever financial stipulations they put on it. But it couldn't be, so if I had a house and if, let's say the cap on it's 450,000. So if I bought a house and I lived in it for 2 years and it met all of the rules for the first-time home buyer, and I wanted to sell, someone that wanted to buy that house couldn't buy that house and get the first-time home buyer
Because it's not a new
because it's
construction.
not a new construction.
Oh, wow.
So in order to fit
It's
35,000 homes in the next 5 years, 4 years, I can't remember what his goal is. Anyway, in order to do that, they are strongly looking at saying if a developer's gonna come in and he can't just tell you he's gonna do it, he has to make sure that there's deed restrictions on the property and everything, so that people that are buying that can't flip them and whatnot. They have to live there 5 years and the whole 9 yards. But they can come in and build so many units to the acre, even in existing zones.
So you're saying that the governor's pushing this or he's
State
got
legislature.
legislatures that are pushing
Both.
it?
It's the governor's initiative on the first-time home buyer deal. And the legislature is all on board with that because they want to
It
help
has to be new
you.
construction.
But it has to be new
Well,
construction.
all affordable housing has to be new housing. I mean, you don't wanna discriminate against somebody.
You don't want anybody who owns a little house to be able to sell it.
No, I mean, you don't want that.
Why
affordable.
would you want them to be able to sell their house?
So,
Because
anyway, just think
you
about
want them to
that.
stay in
24
that house so
prepare for
somebody else can build a new
24
one.
people. I don't know how many you
Somebody
still
else
have
can
there.
build a new one.
You know, figure it's about 24 people on your 10,000 square foot lot.
Anyway, it is
Yeah.
something to pay attention to. And I'm actually starting to I contacted one of the local developers that I know does higher density, and I said, in all reality, what are we looking at? And he said, you're probably looking at 4,200 square foot lots. In order to put adequate infrastructure and all that kind of stuff.
And be able to sell it at a price that will meet the
And
same.
we used to call that
Started.
single family high density, and that will be the That will be the starting density and it only gets more dense from there.
It's gonna have to go up.
No, and they're also saying that they don't think that the market can create this, that they're gonna have to legislate it. In a police state. We don't believe that the people in Providence can work with their developers and create anything like this. We just don't trust you. We're going to force it on you.
Right, before we go down that, we're too far. Have we covered all of your
I'm
questions?
done. I think-
No.
I think
on
we got
this
one more graphic or two more graphics?
two.
I've got the,
Two graphics. Okay,
When we take this to public hearing, can we pull all of the for reference so that we're not, so we're addressing the issue that we have side over rather than the whole code?
You
Yeah,
want
what it
only
goes-
the code you got to address. You don't want to present all of it.
No.
Right.
No,
I think that's-
no, I just included the, 5412 so that you could see how this graphic is actually gonna be applied in the fence and area regulations.
Do we have to take this piece to public hearing where city council is doing a public hearing as well?
Yes.
Yep, any land you set, you have to public hearing.
Michael Fortune, any comments on this one?
No, I think it all sounds good.
Sorry, we're keeping you up late.
I'm in a different time zone. I am in
Oh,
Utah, but my mind is somewhere else.
I just want to make one other comment, just really quickly. I know it's late. So all of these that are there right now apply to whether there's a house on that land or not on that land.
Right,
So I'm just wondering if instead of doing what you're saying is just, can we indicate how agricultural or developed land, or I don't know how you do
can we
that,
say
vacant or,
regardless of zoning? Do you want us to say something?
I don't know, I'm
like
just
that?
thinking of something like that instead of another
Yeah.
graph that.
Yeah, sure.
That'll
Just
do it,
take
like,
the
these
whole-
are what you can do and can't do, even if it's a vacant. lot
Yeah,
or
maybe,
whatever.
maybe we have to have two for that, for the vacant, one right against the property line that has a red X and one that's on the setback, that's green.
I'll work with Justin and we'll figure
Okay,
something.
cause they all apply to either situation, really,
Yeah,
right?
Right, but then if you're talking about vacant, it's not just vacant on the left, it could be vacant on the right. And occupied on the left, built on the left, and so.
Either
now
one
you
they
get
apply, yeah.
Yeah.
Whether there's a house there or not,
And so good luck on the graphics.
you'll do the right thing.
They'll be
Well,
great.
As long as we can talk about it and then put an X on it or a green check mark on it, I think we'll be fine with the next study session on this. Or follow up after the public hearing.
So do you want to move this to a public hearing?
Just a second, there's one other thing on line 12. So greater than 6 feet in height, rear and non-street side setbacks for retaining walls greater than 6 feet in height. Or where the exposed side of the wall faces out from the subject parcel. And then it says without regard to height. And I think that needs to change to anything greater than 3 feet. Because you can do the 3-foot wall. But you can't do if it's
well, less than 3
between
feet. It would need to
over
say,
3 feet to 6 feet.
yeah, because down in A, it says less than 3 feet. Retaining walls are exempt from the setback requirements. So we've kind of got a contradiction right there, so we'll make that so it's not
So
contradictory.
we just need to take out without regard to height. Say greater than 3 feet, right?
3 feet or greater, and then it will match the other one.
3 feet or greater, right? Equal to or greater than 3 feet. And I talked to you already about my comments on the rest of this stuff, so.
Yep.
If that's not anything we have to deal with, then. If you want to, you can include my comments or we can talk again, whatever.
Anything else, Bob?
No, I'm ready to leave.
Don't believe yet, we're gonna do a vote. Michael, nothing else
Yes,
on
sir.
this ordinance? Nothing else on this ordinance?
I think you guys are heading down the right path.
Okay, Shelley?
I'll make a motion to move this to a hearing.
I'm not done, Shelley. Yes, you can make a motion. Bob? thank you.
I second it.
Good, Bob.
I'm the chairman today.
She made a motion.
You can make motions all day long, but you're not gonna get me to present.
I
it.
have no other comment. about
Oh,
it.
thank you very much. Shelley, can you give me an idea? Do you have any more comments on this? Or are you just gonna assume and just move on?
I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay, we've got a motion. I will honor the motion that you've made to take this to public hearing.
And the second. from
And
Bob.
I know, I just want to make sure, second hearing. I'm saying it's to a public hearing. And everybody's okay with that. That's what Shelley said. And Bob Hinkie has seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Michael. Any opposed? Okay, voting was unanimous. We need one more.
A motion that we close the meeting.
You were reading my mind.
So.
They figured out.
You're ready for a closing here.
We've got a motion to end the meeting. Shelley,